Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, is that so? Elfman muttered. He'd known poorly Uzuka for longer, but in that moment, he wasn't so sure he knew her better than Rhodes did. Let's go, Rhodes said, summoning 2 merc wolves to carry them. He glanced at the tear on Elfman's shirt. You hurt? Just a scratch. It'll heal fast, Elfman said, rolling up his sleeve to show a shallow wound. How's my sister? Is she alright? Rhodes smiled. Myra's fine. You should have seen her when she got mad, absolutely badass. She was so fierce when she started pounding those phantom guys. Elfman tilted his head back with a complicated expression. How could I not know what my sister looks like when she's angry? To most people, it would be terrifying. But this guy actually finds it attractive? Elfman sighed and shouted what he always did in moments of emotional conflict, a real man. The iron rods that had impaled the Fairy Tale Guild Hall were finally removed. Loki had even patched up some of the larger holes with basic repairs. At first, the idea was to open up more space so people could rest inside. But after the rods were pulled out, the entire structure started to groan and sway. In the end, it was too unstable to use the main floor. Everyone had no choice but to stay and recover in the basement. Lucy had already told everyone her full name and the likely reason Phantom Lord had come after her. But most of them had already guessed as much. The enemy hadn't exactly kept things secret. And just like Myra had said earlier, things had gone far beyond Lucy's personal matter. Natsu walked up to her and clapped her on the shoulder. You said you wanted to stay here, right? Yeah. Lucy nodded with a pout. I want to stay in Fairy Tale. Then that's that, Natsu said with a grin. No one's gonna take away one of our own. High society lady and stuff like that, just doesn't suit you. Right? Happy chimed in. You're more like, regular Lucy. And Lucy's eyes are wet. They're tears. Lucy sniffled, half laughing through her tears. Sorry. This happened even though I was here. Riz's voice was uncharacteristically quiet. If I had just gone with the master when he confronted them. What are you saying? Locke adjusted his glasses. You were fighting just as hard as the rest of us. Yeah. Kana added, spreading her deck of cards on the floor as if reading a battlefield fortune. If that's how you're thinking, then all of us are to blame. Max clenched his fists. It's all because those phantom bastards played dirty. They used an illusion of Lucy being tortured just to distract the master. Exactly. Nab slammed a bandaged hand into his other palm. The pain made his face twitch, but he growled through it. Can't forgive them. Messing me up so bad I can't even do my job. Across the room, Vegeta mumbled under his breath. Pretty sure your lack of work had nothing to do with them. Myra carefully bandaged Mickey's wound. The girl had charged too recklessly in battle. In any case, Myra said, tying the final knot. Everyone, use this time to rest. The war's not over yet. Her voice was calm, but her words carried a chill. The master had collapsed. Without Makarov, there was a gaping hole in both morale and leadership. Spiritually, it felt like the heart of the guild had stopped beating. And tactically, there was no denying it, Fairy Tale's current forces were outmatched. While Riza and Myra remained as their strongest pillars, Phantom Lord's guild master, Jose, was a wizard saint, one of the 10 holy wizards. No one besides Makarov could realistically challenge him one-on-one. And then there was the man who struck Makarov down with terrifying magical power. His identity and strength remained unclear. If Guild Arts had been here, or if Luxus and Mistogan had both answered the call, things might have been different. That was what most members quietly believed. The worst part was, Luxus had outright refused to help. And Guild Arts and Mistogan? Unreachable. The only sliver of good news was that Myra and Rhodes had captured 2 of the Element 4. That alone lifted a heavy weight from everyone's minds. More than anything, it was the image of Rhodes summoning an entire army of magical beasts during the retreat that stuck with them. That guy. He used to be a headache when you had to deal with him solo. But now, Fighting alongside him made things feel survivable. As long as he was on the battlefield, no one had to worry about being outnumbered. Myra was the first to notice Rhodes and Elfman return. "Rhodes, Elfman, how's the master?" The chatter in the basement ceased instantly. Dozens of eyes turned to them, hoping for even a sliver of good news. Rhodes smiled gently. "Don't worry. The master's out of danger. Granny Polly Uzuka says he'll wake up soon." A wave of relieved cheers swept through the room. "Oh." Cheers echoed, louder than expected. The old man was going to be okay. From the corner, Gray's voice called out, a little drowsy but alert. "Hey. That water ghost chick just woke up." Chapter 336, The strongest fairy tale soul had been beaten far too hard by Rhodes and still hadn't stirred. Juvia, on the other hand, was the first to regain consciousness. Many of the fairy tale members glared at her. After all, this woman was one of the key reasons the guild had ended up in its current state. If Rhodes and Myra hadn't arrived in time, Lucy would likely have been captured. Still, no one took their anger out on Juvia or the unconscious soul. Even now, fairy tale's kindness held strong. They gave their enemies the bare minimum of medical treatment and didn't just let them bleed out. "It's good she's awake," someone murmured. "Now we can at least ask if she knows anything about Phantom Lord's next move." Rhodes calmly distributed the potions he'd received from Polly Uzuka and casted red and blue buff to restore the team's strength. "She's not going to just spill the plan that easily. Right?" Gray muttered, scratching the back of his head. Still, he walked over to the bed where Juvia lay and stood beside her. "Hey. You awake?" Juvia's vision was hazy, her thoughts disoriented. At first, she thought it had all been a dream, a nightmare filled with a terrifying woman who had pounded her into the ground, her expression murderous and merciless. But then the pain in her battered body reminded her it was all very real. Her dazed eyes slowly focused on the figure standing over her. So handsome. The man was covered in bandages, across his arms, waist, and legs. His shirt was missing, and his scowl made him look annoyed and aloof. But just looking at him made her heart pound. She couldn't look away. Gray noticed the way she was staring and glanced down at himself. He quickly clarified. "These injuries aren't from Phantom. They're from my fight with my mentor." Gray spoke with quiet pride. That battle had been important to him. The thought of anyone mistaking these scars as Phantom's doing genuinely irritated him. He valued the meaning behind those wounds. "So cool. Juvia." She gasped dreamily. "Huh? What?" Gray blinked. "Didn't catch that." He sighed and repeated his question, this time a bit more gently. "I asked if you knew what Phantom's next move is." So gentle. If it's you, Juvia will." Juvia's cheeks flushed red as she shyly confessed the truth. Jose was planning to launch a direct assault on Fairy Tale. To her, it didn't matter if she gave away the plan. After all, the most important part had already succeeded by the time she passed out. Whether she and Saul managed to bring Lucy back or not, President Jose would still find a way to remove Makarov, leaving Fairy Tale without a true counter to him. So spilling the rest of the plan now felt pointless. Watching her swoon, Rhodes leaned over and patted Gray on the shoulder. "Not bad. You pulled off the beauty trap like a pro." Gray's face twisted. "I did not. You're shirtless and charming. That's textbook beauty trap." "When did I?" Gray, of course, was only wearing shorts again. Natsu lit up with a mischievous grin. "Hey, Happy, go distract Gray, and I'll grab his shorts." "Aye, sir." Happy chirped with a salute. Before the plan could be executed, Lucy yanked Natsu's scarf and Happy's tail in tandem. "Can you not do that right now?" A little chaos to lighten the mood was fine, but not when they were on the verge of another serious battle. Across the room, Rhodes had been quietly talking with Myra and Rosa. After a few quick exchanges, he clapped his hands together. Loud and sharp. "All right. That's enough chatter. Time for a combat meeting." It might have seemed odd for Rhodes to take command when Rosa and Myra, two top S-class mages, were present. But neither objected. In fact, they flanked him like trusted lieutenants. Rosa's sword rested calmly by her side, and Myra nodded softly, offering her full support. Everyone fell silent and turned toward him. Rhodes didn't waste any time. "Let's be clear, this war is one we have to win. Who are we up against? Phantom Lord. A guild that's just as well known as we are. The enemy has two main objectives. First, they want to capture Lucy. Second, they want to destroy our guild. And they're using a bogus mission as their excuse." He let the statement hang for a moment before continuing. "If we lose this war, Phantom will spin the narrative, accusing us of obstructing their mission. And with how the Magic Council operates, they'll reprimand Phantom for being a little excessive, then turn around and order us to disband." Gasps rippled through the group. Some fists clenched. Some brows furrowed. The air grew heavier. Rhodes' voice rose, ringing clear. If that happens, we don't just lose the guild, we lose everything. He took a breath, then pressed on. So what's our goal? Number 1, protect Lucy. Number 2, protect the guild. Number 3. His gaze swept across the crowd. There were injuries, bandages, exhaustion, but there was also fury and fire. We pay them back. For destroying our home. For ambushing our master. For what they did to Levy and her team. For every single one of our wounded comrades. He raised his voice and clenched his fist. We return every blow tenfold. Why-ya? The guild roared in unison. Why we fight? That question meant everything in fairy tale. Rhodes began with the most important point, something even more vital than plans or logistics. Because a fairy tale that fights with conviction is the strongest fairy tale of all. Mirza and Myra exchanged a knowing look and smiled. This kind of morale boost. It was exactly what they needed. Once the cheers settled and the room grew quiet again, Rhodes continued. Next, let's talk battle strategy. Now, I know the enemy outnumbers us, but in terms of real power, we have the advantage. It was a paradoxical statement. But when Rhodes said it, no one doubted it for a second. The Phantom's deadliest weapon isn't just their mages. It's their guild itself. Read us? Got it. Rita stepped forward and unrolled a large schematic. At first glance, it looked like a strange mechanical spider. But on closer inspection, it became clear, this was no beast. It was a fortress. The infamous six-legged walker. Their mobile headquarters, capable of transforming and unleashing devastating firepower. Its primary weapon was Jupiter, their magic converging cannon. A single shot could level the fairy tale guild in an instant. Rumor had it that it could transform even further, unlocking an even more powerful weapon. Gray had been tasked with digging up more information, but there was no time to wait. Our first objective is clear. Rhodes declared. We cannot let Jupiter, or anything stronger, fire. That's where some of you come in. He grinned. In short, sabotage. We blow it up before it gets in range. The guild burst out laughing. The same trait that usually gave Master Mikrov headaches, destructive impulsiveness, was now being praised as a tactical specialty. One person in particular looked way too excited. Ahahaha. Natsa bellowed, flames leaking from the sides of his mouth. This mission's mine. Don't think you're the only one good at demolition, flame brain. Yeah, Natsu. Quit trying to hog all the fun. Amid the laughter and energy, Juvia sat quietly in the corner, watching the scene unfold. Her heart was full of questions. How? How can they laugh like this? Did they not understand the overwhelming power of Phantom Lord? Or worse, did they understand it perfectly, and still chose to fight head-on? Were all fairy tale mages this reckless? This fearless? This radiant? Her gaze lingered on Gray for a moment longer. Back at the center of the guild, Rhodes raised his hand to settle the room. Now, don't be too eager. The enemy won't just sit there and let us sabotage their walker. There will be resistance. He looked over at Myra and leaned in, whispering something into her ear while subtly nodding toward Juvia and the still unconscious Saul slumped in the corner. Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. She nodded, then turned to Gray. Gray, can I trouble you to take our two guests to another room? Gray sighed and moved to comply. Got it. The two fandom members couldn't be present for the more sensitive parts of the strategy session. If Juvia was willing to talk, great. If not, well, Myra had other ways of ensuring she got her rest. Chapter 337, Prepare for War. The big spider attacks. Juvia hadn't been able to provide much intel. The main issue was simple. A massive mobile guild like Phantom Lord six-legged walker needed an immense source of magical energy to function. Its core energy systems were located in the guild master's chamber, meaning they were nearly impossible to reach and destroy directly. However, she did confirm what Rhodes had suspected about the weapon systems. Jupiter, their magic cluster cannon, was powered by a large magical crystal. The other, more dangerous weapon required the element 4 to serve as living conductors, using a magic circuit that linked them directly to the guild's weapon core. That was good news. And bad. Good, because two of the 4 elements, Sol and Juvia, had already been defeated. Their absence would definitely disrupt Phantom's magical circuit. Bad, because Jose might reassign the remaining 2 slots to himself and Gagiel, the Iron Dragon's lair. If that happened, the destructive potential would remain high, and the challenge of disabling the weapon systems would become even more difficult. Still, the goal remained the same: take them all down. Including Joseph. Rhodes quickly reorganized the guild into multiple combat squads based on magical specialty, power level, teamwork potential, and current injury status. He'd dueled most of them before, so he knew their abilities inside and out. That knowledge helped him form cohesive, efficient strike teams on the fly. After outlining the plan in detail, He ordered the teams to rest and prepare while they awaited the final coordinates for Phantom's assault route. Minor adjustments would be made once that was confirmed. Before stepping away, he gave buff to the more heavily wounded members, then clapped once. "Warren, you're with me. Everyone else, stay on standby." Warren's telepathy magic made him perfect for real-time battlefield coordination. On top of that, he had innate perception and directional awareness, ideal for acting as command relay. As they stepped out, Rhodes paused, then looked back and added, "Oh, one more thing. We're the best guild in Fiore. We've got the best mages in the world. And we're more ready than we've ever been. That means one thing, this victory is ours." Rhodes raised his fist. Fairy tale. Every member in the room echoed with a roar, fists held high. "We must win." "Whoa. Seriously, this is a bit much, right?" Warren muttered. They had arrived at a hidden spot along the lakeside behind the guild, roughly a kilometer away. The lakey bank was already swarming with restless void mites, their blue-violet bodies hopping and squirming, eager for battle. Every now and then, one would launch itself into the air, snapping at the sky, only to land in place again, corralled by 3 massive void drubs. The void drubs radiated control, keeping the smaller ones in check. A blue sentinel followed Rhodes closely, maintaining his blue buff. But Rhodes still looked unsatisfied. Not enough. There wasn't enough time. We've only built up. What, less than 3,000? Even so, with a rough estimate of 10 void knights per target, it could completely flip the enemy's numbers advantage. And just the sight of them swarming into battle would be enough to terrify any opponent. Suddenly, Rhodes narrowed his eyes. He placed a hand on Warren's shoulder. "Patch me into everyone." "On it." Warren pressed 2 fingers to his temple. "All teams, incoming message from the command unit," he announced telepathically. Across the guild grounds and surrounding area, every member froze and focused. Rhodes' voice rang clearly in their minds. "We've located the 6-legged walker. Phantom is moving in from the northeast, across the lake. Estimated distance, 15 kilometers. Everyone, prepare for combat. Assault teams, deploy now. Mobile teams, follow the route we discussed. Execute as planned. And Natsu, don't go charging ahead like last time." "Got it." "Understood." "Hey, why'd you single me out?" Because Rhodes said Natsu gets motion sickness. Phantom's big spider was definitely not a place for Natsu to be. Rhodes didn't want him rushing in headfirst and handing himself over as a free meal. Several figures shot out of the guild yard like arrows loosed from a bow. Upon reaching the lake, Gray stepped forward and pressed his hand to the surface. Ice Make, Lakeside Promenade. A wide path of shimmering ice stretched out before them, broad enough for 10 mages to walk side by side. The slick surface was intricately patterned with anti-slip ridges, like a work of art forged in frost. "Gray, you're a man." Elfman bellowed, charging ahead across the icy road with Kana, Loke, and Gray close behind. Natsu scowled and jogged to catch up, Happy flapping after him. He'd been banned from boarding the Big Spider Phantom's mobile fortress, until the last moment. Without air support from Happy, there was a risk he'd just punch one of the legs and fall straight into the lake. Finding and destroying the central magic crystal was left to others. Natsu's only assignment was aerial backup if needed. Urza, Myra, and Lucy set off shortly after. Lucy puffed her cheeks, muttering. "He actually put me on a team with Urza and Myra. Does Rhodes really think I'm that strong?" Urza nodded gravely. "You're the one who took down the gorilla mercenary Duke. Rhodes must believe in your potential." "That was a rumor. And the story keeps getting worse." Lucy whined. Myra chuckled softly. She could tell Rhodes had placed Lucy here not just because of her potential, but because this team could best protect her, and use her skills at the right time. "Sniper team, move out. Gray, make sure the supply point is prepped." "Got it." Elzik and Bisk led a handful of long-range specialists down a separate path, headed for high ground to form a sniper nest. Waiting for the enemy inside the guild would have been foolish. With the kind of firepower Phantom had, even a single stray blast could level half the town. Instead, Fairy Tail had resolved to take the fight outside. Their goal, stop the enemy before they could reach the city. Turn Phantom's weapon against itself. Fight them inside their own fortress. While sprinting along the icy path, Gray spotted a blue flag planted by the shore. "You guys go ahead," he called. He conjured a separate, narrow ice slide for himself and glided smoothly toward the lakeside. The so-called supply point? A massive blue sentinel standing silently at roadside. As soon as Gray arrived at the supply point, he was enveloped in a swirl of glowing blue streamers. "It's really not necessary," Gray muttered as the magic settled on him. "Making a path across the lake is easier than doing it on land." "I still think it's necessary," Rhodes replied, handing him a parchment. "I need you to build a few more routes." We're creating a basic transport network on the lake. Gray raised a brow. 2 reasons. Rhodes continued. 1. It gives us multiple fallback routes. 2. It hides the true position of the Void Knights. We can't let the enemy spot them too soon. This was Rhodes' first time commanding an operation of this scale. He didn't have the luxury of experience, and he knew some of this should have been arranged earlier. Still, better to fix it now than not at all. Well, if you think it's important. Gray didn't argue. With a generous supply of magic power thanks to the buff, he was fine with being a little overworked. I'll handle it. You take care of whatever's next. Rhodes gave a nod, his green takeover armor forming around him in a glimmer of light. Without hesitation, he dove into the lake. Roughly 5 kilometers away, across the lake's far side, a massive walking fortress lumbered forward. The structure looked like a castle suspended above 6 gigantic mechanical legs. With every step, the ground shook. Deep pits formed underfoot, cracks splintering out in jagged lines across the soil. Though the shock absorption systems reduced vibration, the sheer weight of the Phantom Guild's mobile fortress still sent trembling tremors echoing across the land. At the top floor of the fortress, deep within the castle-like main building, stood Phantom Lord's Guild Master, Jose Porla. From the window of his office, he raised a magically enhanced monocular telescope to his eye. A small violet magic circle glowed around the lens, clearly a custom-made intelligence-gathering tool. As expected of a man who loved flair and theatrics, Jose always carried enchanted gadgets for information gathering. "What's this?" he murmured, narrowing his eyes. He spotted icy walkways forming atop the lake, with several figures racing along them toward shore. "So they've decided to come to us first?" Jose lowered the telescope and snapped his fingers. "Prepare Jupiter for loading." No matter what Fairy Tail planned, it didn't matter. As long as they entered range, the guild's main weapon, Jupiter, the magic converging cannon, would obliterate them in a single shot. Chapter 338, Take Over, Rift Herald. Boom. 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 The towering mechanical monstrosity marched forward, its massive limbs pounding the ground with rhythmic thunder. Each step sent tremors rolling through the earth, shaking trees, rattling rocks, and causing gentle ripples to form across the lake's surface. At the front of the ironclad behemoth, a long, gleaming barrel extended outward, its sheen catching the sunlight with an ominous metallic glare. A dense aura of magic began gathering at the muzzle, a swirling vortex of blue and black energy forming with visible intensity. It pulsed with killing intent. This was Jupiter, Phantom Lord's infamous magic cluster cannon, so powerful it could obliterate a guild hall with a single shot. And right now, it was locked onto the approaching members of Fairy Tail. Cannon narrowed her eyes. "Heads up, everyone. If that thing hits us, we're toast." Notsa blinked. "Wait. Didn't Rhodes say he'd take care of the first shot?" Loke adjusted his glasses with a sigh. "He did, but he also said to prepare to be yanked underground if necessary. A man shouldn't let his guard down." Elfman added, puffing up his chest even as he kept an eye on the cannon's glow. All of them were still sprinting across the lake path, but their attention remained locked on the looming barrel. Somewhere out there, Rhodes was moving. Inside Phantom Lord's fortress. The operation center, tension rose. "Master Jose." The driver reported. "Jupiter is charged and locked on. Targets are within range." Jose sneered, raising his monocle as the light of destruction gleamed through the stained glass windows behind him. "Good. Blow them straight to heaven." He had noticed Lucy trailing near the rear of the formation, but scoffed at the thought of it being genuine. That was obviously bait. A bluff. There's no way Fairy Tail would risk placing their precious Heartfilia heiress in the line of fire. In his mind, it was just one more ploy to make him hesitate. He wouldn't. "Fire." "Yes, sir." The operator shouted, pulling the lever. The cannon began to hum, a heavy vibration growing stronger as raw magic surged through the internal coils. A blue-black cyclone of energy swirled inside the barrel, compressing into a gleaming sphere of concentrated magic power. The pressure was so overwhelming, it could be felt even by those not looking directly at it. And then... Toom. A violent quake rocked the entire chamber. The lights flickered. The cannon's aim suddenly jolted. The blast, mere seconds away from firing, veered off course. Jose spun around. "What was that?" "Master Jose!" shouted the lookout, panicked. "A purple creature. A giant purple creature is attacking our rear legs. It's that strategist from Fairy Tail." "What?" Rhodes had moved with surgical precision. Using the crab form, he had zipped across the lake at blinding speed, overtaking the rest of his team. Once ashore, he transitioned into crag form and burrowed deep underground, skirting beneath the phantom forces entirely. With Warren's telepathic guidance providing real-time positioning, Rhodes found the perfect opportunity, and struck. From the shadows, a pulse of summoning magic erupted. The Rift Herald, a monstrous, hulking purple beast, roared into the material plane, trailing phantom echoes as it launched itself forward. With a thunderous crash, it slammed into the rear right leg of the Phantom Guild's mobile fortress. Cracks spread outward from the point of impact, webbing across the entire surface of the mechanical leg. The leg visibly sagged under its own weight. The Rift Herald continued to hammer its massive pincers into the joint like a living siege engine, each strike reverberating like a war drum. A sickening creak echoed through the air as the metal strained under pressure. Too slow. At this rate, we won't break through in time. Rhodes burst from the earth nearby, eyes focused. Take over, Rift Herald. A pulse of energy enveloped his body as his form transformed. Purple armor, chitinous and gleaming, snapped into place over his limbs. A segmented mask covered his head, leaving only his glowing violet eyes visible. His upper torso was adorned with angular chest armor shaped like an inverted triangle, etched with eerie, pulsing purple eyes. From his back unfurled a pair of jagged, carapace-like wings, and a thick, armored tail swept low behind him. His arms became colossal violet pincers, his legs reinforced and plated for power and speed. From a distance, he looked like a humanoid version of the Rift Herald, monstrous, relentless, and majestic, like a fusion of the Void Beast and a battle-hardened knight. The wings beat once. With a surge of energy, Rhodes rocketed forward in a flash of violet light, lowering his shoulder as he crashed into the mechanical leg with tremendous force. Boom. Crack. A deep dent sank into the already damaged joint. Fractures spread like spiderwebs from the impact zone, joining with the cracks left by the Herald's previous strikes. They formed a chaotic lattice of instability, unseen but deadly. Bits of armor plating and mechanical debris began breaking away, falling in a steady rain from the limb. Internally, hidden components, gears, conduits, support rods shattered like glass. Rhodes leapt back just in time to witness the results. The entire leg gave way with a terrible groan. First, the external shell disintegrated, then the internal structure buckled and caved inward. The propulsion system, joint servos, and power relays snapped and crumbled in rapid succession. With a final, deafening crash, the colossal mechanical limb collapsed completely. The shockwave kicked up clouds of smoke and dust, so dense they swallowed everything nearby. Even the towering Rift Herald, standing amidst the rubble, vanished from sight, its form reduced to a silhouette blurred by churning dust. The moment the mechanical leg gave way, the entire Phantom Lord Guild structure, mounted atop the six-legged mobile fortress, lurched violently toward the ruined limb. Caught off guard, many of the Phantom members inside the building lost their footing and tumbled across the slanted floor like bowling pins. Cries and crashes echoed through the tilted hallways as members rolled helplessly into walls and one another. Some flattened awkwardly against vertical surfaces, their cheeks comically squashed. Others were knocked over by their own teammates, groaning in confusion. Totomaru, representing the element of fire, jabbed his sword into the floor to anchor himself. Arya, the wind user, coolly thrust his hands into the walls, using wind pressure to stabilize his position. Gagiel Red Fox, the Iron Dragon's lair, had no such trouble. His feet extended sharp spikes into the metal flooring, anchoring him with ease. He looked irritated, but otherwise unfazed. In the operations chamber, the driver had been strapped into a fixed seat and managed to stay upright. Guildmaster Jose, meanwhile, caught the back of the command chair just in time to maintain his composure. Damn it. These legs are built from high-grade magical alloys, how the hell did one just break? Jose bellowed. Snarling, he barked an order, stabilize the structure now. Reset balance. And tell Gagiel to eliminate that bastard immediately. Boom. At that exact moment, the Jupiter cannon, already charged, fired. But with the walker tilting, the shot veered wildly off course. A massive beam of compressed magic shot straight into the sky, punching a hole through the cloud cover like a lance of energy. For a moment, the clouds parted, revealing a brilliant, unnatural circle of clear sky. The surrounding mist tried to fill the hole, but it was slow to do so. The raw power of that blast was awe-inspiring. Back on the ground, the fairy tale members roared with joy. Rhodes did it. Right between the eyes. He took out that monster in one strike. Then Rhodes' voice echoed in everyone's mind, projected through telepathy. Assault team, advance. Mobile team, regroup at my position. Warren will guide you. Got it. Elfman shouted. With a surge of power, he and the rest of the front line sprinted toward the now unstable Phantom Guild fortress. Let's move. Mirza said. She and Myra led Lucy quickly through the smoke under Warren's direction, closing in on Rhodes' location. A thick shroud of dust and debris cloaked Rhodes' surroundings. Using the shared vision of one of the crabs he had left behind, he locked onto the location of the next mechanical leg. He leapt onto the back of the Rift Herald and charged forward without hesitation. If I can bring down another leg, we'll turn their six-legged spider into a limping walker. But just as he surged through the smoke and dust, a gleaming iron bar whistled through the air above. Chapter 339, he was the one who destroyed our guild. Rhodes heard the sharp whistling of something cutting through the air behind him. Instinctively, he raised his right arm, his armored pincer catching the incoming blow. Clang! The metal-on-metal collision rang out as the iron rod struck with tremendous force from above. The impact reverberated through Rhodes' arm like a hammer against a steel anvil. "TCH. I figured someone would get in the way," he muttered, squinting through the swirling dust. Barely visible through the fog of debris, the shape of Gagiel Red Fox emerged, Iron Dragon's lair, standing tall with a smirk of amusement. He leapt onto the back of the Rift Herald, iron rod reverting into his hand. "TCH. Even with all this smoke, you still blocked it? That brain of yours really is something, huh, fairy tale strategist?" "To be honest," Rhodes said coolly, stepping forward and leaping upward. "I've just had a lot of practice deflecting flying junk." Gagiel tensed to meet him, only to stumble as the surface beneath him gave way. "What the?" It vanished. The Rift Herald, responding to its master's silent command, had disappeared the instant Rhodes left its neck. In midair, Rhodes twisted and whipped his tail, heavy as iron, directly at Gagiel's waist. Lesson 1, don't stand on someone else's summon without permission. Wham! The blow landed clean. Gagiel's body arched from the force as he was sent flying sideways like a missile, disappearing into the thick dust with a loud crash. A few seconds passed before a massive, jagged sword came hurtling from the haze. Iron Dragon's sword. Rhodes raised both of his pincers. With a clench, he caught the serrated blade in mid-swing. The strength behind it was immense, but the crushing grip of his claws dug into the iron, pinning it with a metallic screech. Then, slam. With a spin, he flung Gagiel up and smashed him into the dirt. Gagiel groaned but recovered quickly. The sword dissolved into iron dust, and his body was now coated in black, metallic scales. He raised his arm, proudly showing it off. "Iron Dragon scales," he declared. "With these, your attacks can't touch me." Rhodes arched a brow. "I heard the same thing about Fire Dragon scales." That didn't stop Natsu from getting burned by black flames and screaming. He surged forward, pincer snapping with force. Gagiel charged in as well, fists swinging like wrecking balls. The iron scales added weight and impact to each punch. The battlefield echoed with the boom of every hit. Shockwaves rippling through the air, rustling clothing and scattering the haze around them with every blow. Their melee was a storm of heavy strikes and brute force, neither giving an inch. Then Rhodes spun again, tail whipping around in a vicious arc. Gagiel crossed his arms to block it, skidding backward from the hit. Chunks of broken iron fell from his forearm. Rhodes tilted his head. "Wait. I thought these scales made you immune to attacks. Why are your arms shaking?" Rhodes had to admit that this kid's punches and kicks were very heavy, but compared to Myra, he still needed to practice more. Gagiel gritted his teeth, fighting to stop the tremors. "TCH. You're not bad. Way tougher than those other 3 losers I trashed." He was solid like steel, but his mouth? Even harder. Rhodes chuckled under his breath. "Don't waste your breath trying to provoke me. I don't have time to play games." Sure, part of him wanted to take over the mountain dragon's soul and drive Gagiel's face into the dirt, but that wasn't his mission right now. Through the vision of his summoned crab, Rhodes observed the situation. The 2 right legs of the 6-legged walker had grown thicker, an emergency adjustment just barely keeping the massive guild fortress balanced. But even now, it was still inching forward. Jose wasn't done. He wouldn't stop until he blasted Fairy Tale to rubble. Time to tear the rest of it down. Rhodes turned on his heel and began to retreat. "What's wrong? Afraid of me, the mighty Iron Dragon?" Gagiel yelled after him, puffing his chest. Rhodes didn't even glance back. That taunt was pathetic. Not even worth replying to. "Bastard!" Gagiel growled, veins bulging in his temple. Being ignored was the worst insult of all. He inhaled deeply, iron magic swirling around his throat. Iron Dragon's Roa. Crack. A high-heeled shoe slammed into the side of Gagiel's face like a missile. Satan soul. The blow shattered the iron scales on his jaw. His cheek stented visibly, and the breath he'd built up was replaced with a mouthful of blood and a couple cracked teeth. The kick sent him flying. Before he even hit the ground. Requip, black feather armor. A second figure flashed forward in a blur of crimson. Shing. A crescent-shaped arc of light sliced across the battlefield. Sword of the Fairy Queen. Ugh. Ah. Gagiel's battered body took the full brunt of the slash. His clothes shredded. Scales cracked and scattered. The blade had pierced through his Iron Dragon defenses, leaving deep gashes across his torso and arms. He finally crashed into the dirt, rolling through dust and rubble. Blood pooled beneath him, mingling with broken iron scales. Yet. He rose. With trembling limbs, Gagiel forced himself back to his feet. Pah! He spat blood and bits of his own armor to the side. Then he looked up, and what he saw didn't frighten him. It thrilled him. Fairy Queen and Demon Mrajane, you came just in time. Leaving him to you, Rhodes said as he summoned his blue sentinel to refresh the buff on himself. He gave Myra 1-2, then casually turned and walked away, his steps light but purposeful. Before disappearing into the haze of dust and shifting metal, he tossed back a final remark: that guy's the Iron Dragon Slayer who wrecked our guild and attacked Levy. No need for mercy, wrap it up quick and clean. Who are you underestimating? Gagiel growled, insulted to his core. He was one of Phantom Lord's trump cards. A true Dragon Slayer. What if it's 2-on-1, or even 3-on-1? Bring it on. Did they think they could finish him that easily? But then he caught the looks in the eyes of the two women standing before him, Mirza Scarlet and Mrajane Strauss. Requip, fairy armor. Take over, demon soul, Halphas. Arg. Gagiel's scream echoed through the battlefield as he was suddenly swallowed in a flurry of flashing blades, black magic waves, and raw magical pressure. He couldn't even tell how many times he'd been hit. Iron scales? Please. Even if his bones were made of steel, they would have shattered. Gah! From far away, Rhodes could hear Gagiel's tortured wails, and if he wasn't mistaken, Lucy's startled squeak mixed in. She was probably witnessing the full destructive power of Riza and Myra's tandem assault for the first time. Hey! Maybe she got too close. Hopefully not close enough to get blown off her feet. But everything was going according to plan. Fairy Tail's strength wasn't just raw magic, it was strategy. Divide and dominate. Target the isolated reinforcements and crush them swiftly. It was an essential tactic for an external strike force. Technically, this counted as an ambush on reinforcements. They had surrounded Gagiel while simultaneously focusing on crippling the walker's mobility. This was precisely why Myra and Riza had been assigned to the mobile team. What fool would ever send either of them into a one-on-one when the terrain allowed for a tactical 2v1 beatdown? Rhodes tapped his comm crystal. Warren, status on the assault team. They've scaled the walker's frame along the remaining legs. Came the reply. Natsu's up there too, but he's complaining about motion sickness again. Of course he is. Rhodes sighed. Don't worry about him. Happy will keep him airborne. What about the insect force? They've deployed and are still multiplying. Good. Rhodes narrowed his eyes at the towering walker in front of him. Patch me through to the assault team. Warren shifted his fingers and made the connection. This is Rhodes. Do you have eyes on Jupiter's power crystal? His voice came in through the telepathic link. Negative. Phantoms flooding the area with grunts. We can't get close to the barrel. Ugh. I've got a plan. Ugh. Happy. Not now. Do what Natsu says. Rhodes said flatly. Gray, coordinate with them. He wasn't going to micromanage like a chess master. Natsu didn't need someone yelling move the cannon 5 degrees to the left. He just needed trust. Happy chirped. I'm on it. Gray added calmly. Before that, Rhodes said. Brace for an earthquake. I'm counting down. 5. 4. Wait. There was shuffling over the channel, a few grunts of effort, and then silence as everyone hunkered down. The wings on Rhodes' back flared open, violent and sharp like blades of armor. Then, like a spear of pure purple lightning, he rocketed forward, straight into the second mechanical leg. Chapter 340, Can you do it? If not, I will replace you. The Phantom Lord's mobile fortress shook violently under the assault. Elfman, Kana, and Loke had braced themselves in advance, but most of the Phantom squad stationed beneath the massive magic cannon stumbled and fell as the floor tilted under them. Perfect timing. Kana shouted, flinging a handful of cards. Flames, wind, and lightning burst forth in rapid succession, engulfing the narrow corridor under the cannon's barrel. The open passage quickly turned into a blazing inferno. Screams erupted from the Phantom members caught in the blast, some were burned, some blown back, and others turned to flee in a panic. Bad idea to run blindly. Loke warned, flashing the golden ring on his finger. A radiant beam of light burst forth, forcing several enemies to shield their eyes in pain. Men fight with their fists. Elfman roared as he activated Beast Soul, the Beast King, barreling forward with devastating strength. His right fist sent a phantom mage flying through the corridor, his left sweep knocked 3 more into the wall like they were nothing but trash bags. The 3 fairy tale wizards seized the opening and stormed through the gate beneath the cannon. Natsu, let's go. Gray shouted from below, already charging forward. Nah, our way's faster. Natsu grinned through the nausea. Happy, full speed ahead. Aye, sir. Happy grabbed Natsu and soared straight for the cannon's barrel, wings fluttering as they closed the gap. TCH. This idiot. Gray knew what Natsu was planning the moment he veered off course. Who else would think charging the front of the enemy's cannon was a good idea? If they fired now, Natsu would be nothing more than vapor. Ice make, claw grapplers. Gray snapped, summoning two massive ice claws with long chains. The claws latched onto the barrel supports, anchoring him midair. With one sharp pull, Gray launched himself up after Natsu, grabbing the end of the chain as he ascended. He wasn't about to let Natsu go in alone. Meanwhile, beneath the walker, the ground continued to tremble. Less violently than before, but still persistent. Rhodes was systematically smashing one mechanical leg after another. This time, he wasn't in as much of a rush. They had a small window before the Phantom's forces regrouped. And the Void Knight's swarm still needed time to deploy. Inside the walker's narrow corridors, Kana, Loke, and Elfman pushed forward. Loke glanced at the walls, still wary. It's not shaking as hard this time. Think he's slowing down? Kana hurled a card that exploded into a wave of storm magic. Even at half power, it's insane. We tested those legs earlier, remember? Not even a scratch. They all tried. Natsu's fire, Gray's ice, Elfman's fists. At best, they could leave shallow dents. Even that was pushing it. 2 hits and a leg collapses? That kind of strength was on Guild Arts level. Don't worry about it. Elfman said firmly, punching a Phantom Mage into the wall. Rhodes knows what he's doing. He'll give us the time we need. All we have to do is fight. He'd fought beside Rhodes more times than he could count. When Rhodes said to focus on the mission, that's what you did. You didn't need to think about anything else. If Rhodes had been with them, Elfmen might have thought he didn't even need to think about defense, just pick a target and fight. That was the kind of reliability Rhodes brought to a team. Meanwhile, in the Phantom Lord control room, Jose was growing more and more agitated. Gagiel hasn't taken care of things yet? What's taking him so long? Just then, a frantic subordinate ran in. Master Jose. A fairy tale strike team has breached the guild's perimeter. Jose didn't look surprised. He expected them to try something like this. How many? 5 entered. But only 3 remain near Jupiter's chamber. Their target seems to be the cannon. Our men. We can't hold them back. As always, Happy was conveniently ignored in the head count. Jose scoffed. Useless. Just 3 of them. Release the ghost soldiers. He wasn't worried. Jupiter was guarded by Totomaru. Even if the intruders broke into the cannon room, they'd be stopped cold. And if needed, Arya would intervene. Suddenly, Rhodes' voice echoed in the minds of Kana, Loke, and Elfman through Warren's telepathic link. Warren detected a large force heading your way. Look for a choke point to slow them down, but don't hesitate to fall back. Reinforcements will be there soon. Kana nodded. Got it. But, are we the main assault team or the distraction? Current situation? Rhodes replied calmly. You're the distraction inside the assault team. Gray just reported encountering Totomaru. Kana's expression lit up with confidence. Fire element? Oh, we've already won then. Both Loke and Elfman smirked. If it was a fire mage, Natsu would wipe the floor with him. No contest. Or so they thought. Meanwhile, inside Jupiter's power core, the reality was very different. Natsu's flaming punch veered off course at the last second, and slammed directly into Gray, knocking him clean across the room. Gray hit the wall hard, groaning. He staggered to his feet, fury flashing in his eyes. That's the second time, you flaming idiot. Are you doing this on purpose? It's not me. Natsu barked, looking flustered. My body's not listening. Something's off. Gray clenched his fists but paused, narrowing his eyes. As reckless as Natsu was, he wouldn't pull something like this mid-mission. The culprit could only be the samurai standing before them, his black and white hair tied into a top knot, a red hari draped over his shoulders, and a long sword sheathed at his waist. I am Totomaru of the Flame Element, he declared, voice calm and composed. All flames fall under my command, whether born of nature or conjured by an enemy. The only one who commands my flames is me. Natsu shouted, charging forward. Fire Dragon's iron fist. Ugh. His punch twisted midair and slammed into his own face. The impact sent Natsu flying backward in an arc, landing in a heap at Gray's feet. My flames betrayed me? Natsu groaned, eyes spinning. Flames cannot strike me. Totomaru said coolly. That is your misfortune for facing me. Well, I won't be using flames. Gray muttered, clenching his fists. Ice make, Sledgehammer. A massive hammer of ice materialized and swung down from above. Totomaru raised one palm casually. Crimson flame. A torrent of superheated red fire burst from his hand, halting the hammer in midair. The intense heat melted the ice in seconds, steam hissing into the room. Ice make, lance. Gray launched a dozen ice spears toward him. But they, too, were consumed by the swirling red flames. The air filled with fog as water vapor rolled across the chamber. Totomaru advanced slowly, his arm extended like a living flamethrower, fire roaring toward Gray. Suddenly, Natsu stepped in front of him. "Gray, back off." He shoved Gray behind him, opened his mouth wide, and devoured the incoming flames. "Tastes like ketchup? I love it." Natsu grinned, licking his lips. Gray stumbled back, exasperated. "You flaming idiot. You can't even control your own fire, stop getting in my way." "Shut up. I've got it under control now." Natsu butted his forehead against Gray's. "I'll show you what my fire can really do." "Natsu, Gray." Happy hovered beside them, sweat dropping. "Now's not the time to argue." Just then, Rhodes' voice echoed telepathically through Warren. "I'm almost finished on my end. Kana and the others are under heavy pressure. Can you two handle it?" "Of course." The two shouted in perfect sync. "You've got 3 minutes. If you're not done by then, I'm sending in Myra and Ursa." "Like hell you are." They both snapped. "That kind of opponent doesn't need them." Happy muttered with a sweat drop. "They're completely ignoring Lucy again." Honestly, he felt a little bad for her. 3 minutes is too slow, anyway. Natsu growled, tugging on his scarf with a fiery gleam in his eyes. Gray smirked, snapping his fingers as his shirt flew off dramatically. "I'll finish it in 30 seconds. Chapter 341, All-Out Attack Humphrey, 30 seconds? That's underestimating me." Totomaru narrowed his eyes as he recognized Natsu's magic. "So, it is Dragon Slayer magic. Just like Agiel's." With both hands pressed forward, he shouted, "Orange flame. I'll eat that whole thing." Natsu yelled, throwing his mouth open wide to inhale the flames, but the moment they touched him, his face turned green. "It stinks." He gagged, snot and tears pouring down his face. "My nose, it's rotting." "Ice make, shield." Gray leapt in, conjuring a solid wall of ice to protect himself. "Idiot. You were supposed to eat the flame. Not that one." Natsu wailed. "It smells like a 1,000-year-old garbage dump." "Ha." Totomaru chuckled smugly. "That's my orange flame, it smells like little crap. Enjoy." Gray stepped back quickly, nose wrinkling. "Ugh, does that mean you're covered in it now?" Happy zipped out of range too. "Poor Natsu." Totomaru raised his hands slowly. "Now, for my ultimate technique." From his left hand's 2 fingers and his right hand's 5, 7 tiny flames ignited, each glowing with a different color: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. "Gray. That looks really dangerous." Happy warned, backing away again. "I know." Gray tensed, then dashed forward with magic forming in his hands. "Ice make, battle axe." He swung a huge, crystalline axe horizontally. Totomaru was forced to retreat, but not before he raised his hands and the 7 colored flames expanded rapidly. A mixture of sweet and rancid smells, searing heat and chilling cold wind blasted forward all at once. "This is uncomfortable." Happy cried. "It's hot." "No, cold." "Hot again." "What is this?" "This is the 7 colored flame." Totomaru boasted. "A flame that no one can resist, each color with its own elemental chaos." The rainbow-like blaze surged forward, aimed to engulf all 3. Gray crouched and slammed his palms into the ground. "Time's up, Natsu." "Already moving." Natsu didn't wait for the cue. He jumped, stepping on Gray's shoulder and launching himself forward. "Ice make, ice spring." Gray shouted, and from the ground erupted a series of towering ice spires, stretching in a trail toward Totomaru. The icicles grew rapidly, extinguishing the incoming flames and forming a frozen staircase through the inferno. What is this?" Totomaru panicked. The ice rose around him, freezing his feet and hurling him upward like a catapult. By then, Natsu was already sprinting up the icy path with blazing fire cloaking his entire body. He leapt at the final step, his head wreathed in fire. "Fire dragons. Sword horn. It won't work." Totomaru sneered. "Your flames can't, wait, why can't I control it?" "What? Don't mess with my fire." Natsu roared. He slammed into Totomaru like a meteor, the impact igniting the samurai midair. Together they crashed into the enormous Jupiter magic crystal behind him. Boom. Cracks webbed across the surface of the crystal. With a thunderous shatter, it exploded into glittering fragments. "He did it!" Happy shouted, flying in to catch Natsu as he fell. Gray looked up and smirked. "TCH. Took you long enough, Rhodes, it's done." Rhodes' voice echoed back into everyone's mind. "Perfect? Everyone on top, brace for impact, countdown starting. 10. 9. 8. Ha ha ha. Natsu laughed weakly, slumped in Happy's arms. Not bad, Gray. You've got some nerve talking like that. Gray snapped, glaring at Natsu. You knew he could control fire. Why didn't you just punch him instead of breathing flames at him? Are you stupid? What was I supposed to do? That freak was controlling my fire. How could I have known that was even possible? Natsu shot back. So what, you think that gives you a pass for being an idiot? Gray pointed to his own face, squaring up. You wanna go, huh? I've been meaning to knock you around for ages anyway. You got a problem, bring it then. Their foreheads slammed together with a crack, and for a moment it looked like their eyes were about to start shooting lightning. Happy hovered nearby and sighed loudly, arms spread. If one of them were a girl, I'd say they're flirting. Boom. The floor suddenly jolted beneath them. Right on cue with Rhodes' countdown, the ground erupted in tremors. Except it wasn't just shaking. The entire Phantom Guild's mobile base, the colossal six-legged walker, began tilting dangerously to one side. Having lost two of its legs on the same flank, the machine finally tipped past its limit. The crystals rolling. This place is gonna collapse. Gray shouted, spotting fragments of the shattered Jupiter magic core sliding toward them. We've gotta get out of here. Natsu. Natsu's face had turned green again. It's moving, make it stop. Seriously? Gray groaned, face palming. You're still motion sick? You're so much trouble. He slung Natsu over his back like a sack of potatoes and turned to run toward the exit. TCH. Might as well. He paused long enough to grab the unconscious Totomaru by the collar, dragging him along too. Meanwhile, chaos was erupting in the Phantom's command center. Master Jose. A panicked subordinate cried. Gagiel's down. He's been defeated. What? Jose spun around, eyes wide with disbelief. That's impossible. By fairy tales, brats? It seems he encountered the demon Red Jane and Titania Urza while trying to handle the purple monster. At the same time, Jose's jaw clenched. What kind of cursed luck is that? He ran into both monsters at once? And Jupiter's internal power system. It's been destroyed. The messenger added. It looks like Totomaru didn't make it either. Jose didn't even need confirmation. He looked at the console, where a red crystal, the fire elemental node, flickered once, then blinked out completely. Damn you, fairy tale. Suddenly, the floor beneath his feet tilted again, and the command room began to slope hard to one side. The walker's off balance again? Are the legs breaking? Jose bellowed, grabbing the back of a chair for support as papers flew around the room. Quick! Activate the emergency stabilizers. Switch to fixed mode. Yes. The walker was originally capable of transforming into a super magic giant, but that transformation required all four of its rear mechanical legs. In its current condition, that was no longer an option. At this point, just landing without crushing the entire guild was the best they could hope for. To manage transformation and stability, every important room in the Phantom Guild had been constructed with a high-level gyroscopic balance system. Even if the entire guild flipped a full 90 degrees, those critical rooms would reorient themselves. Naturally, the control room was among those equipped with this feature. From each of the two broken mechanical legs, a thick stabilizer tube extended, blasting streams of flame-like propulsion downward. Working in sync with the contraction of the remaining four legs, they slowed the guild's fall dramatically, almost like a soft landing system. That's practically black market tech. Rhodes muttered, retreating a bit to avoid falling debris from the collapsed mechanical limbs. He had originally summoned raptors as airborne mounts to catch Kenna, Elfman, and Loke if they fell. But now, it seemed they wouldn't be needed. That was a relief. At least for now. Rhodes raised his voice, reaching everyone behind him with the projection. Attention, general attack units. Repeat, general attack units, everyone prepare for battle. Oh. We've been waiting for this. Crush Phantom. Warren winced and scratched his ears. So loud. Can't everyone just answer one at a time? You're one to talk. Someone snapped back. You yell louder than any of us. Rhodes tapped his forehead and sighed. These people. Boom. 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 Even with its emergency dampening system, the massive castle-like structure of the Phantom Guild shook the earth when it finally landed. From Rhodes' position, he could see the building wobble like a teetering tower. Inside, it must have felt like an earthquake. A heavy cloud of dust surged upward, blotting out the sun. Visibility dropped instantly, and outside the reinforced command cabins, everyone was knocked around again. Even Elfman and the others were thrown off balance. Should have just flown out on the birds. Kana grumbled, coughing through the dust. Gray, who had been carrying both Natsu and the unconscious Totomaru, tripped and face-planted into the ground. The impact launched the other two forward like ragdolls. Natsu wasn't injured, but his face had turned green again. Ugh! Make it stop spinning. He groaned. The ground finally settled, the shaking ceased, and the void knights swarmed in, encircling the fallen mechanical monster. Rhodes clenched his fists. This was it. The final phase. He issued his commands in rapid order. Mobile team, rendezvous on me. Assault team, temporarily pull back. General attack forces. He took a deep breath, magic surging beneath his armor. Charge. Chapter 342, Cute. The general attack team advanced steadily under the command of veterans Mikal and Wakaba. Nab, Max, Lucky, Visca, Jet, and others each led smaller squads close behind them. The formation had been arranged so that those with lighter injuries led the front lines, while the more heavily injured but still mobile members stayed toward the rear. One mage in front carried a large spellbook, and another in the back hauled a bulging backpack filled to the brim. Essentially, they had emptied out nearly the entire guild inventory for this operation. When they raided the warehouse, Mikarov had looked heartbroken. But Rhodes knew better. Now wasn't the time to be stingy. This is exactly what consumables are for. It was far better to use them all now and regret it later than to hoard them, only to lose a comrade. Rhodes quietly hoped the master would forgive his liberal use of resources once this was all over. The weather wasn't helping either. There was no wind at all, which meant the clouds of dust stirred up by the collapse of the walker's legs and its rough landing still hadn't settled. It was in the midst of this thick haze that Myra, Ursa, and Lucy arrived. They had seen a flash of blue light in the distance. Sure enough, it came from a blue sentinel. Rhodes didn't waste time with small talk. He immediately casted a buff on them. After a quick exchange of greetings, he turned to Lucy and said, "Lucy, can you summon Virgo?" Yeah." Lucy quickly took a key from her belt. "Open, Gate of the Maiden, Virgo." Golden light flickered as a shimmering keyhole appeared in the air, and a magic door swung open. A pink-haired girl in a maid outfit stepped out. She wore white stockings, shackles on her wrists, and a perpetual calm on her face. Virgo placed a hand over her chest, bowed gracefully, and greeted Lucy with her usual ominous tone. "Princess, do you wish to punish me?" Lucy flinched. "Stop saying weird things." Rhodes glanced at the shackles on Virgo's wrists, then at the whip hanging on Lucy's waist, and raised an eyebrow. "Oh? So that's the kind of summoner you are?" "No, it's not." Lucy wailed. She suddenly realized that not a single one of her celestial spirits seemed normal. In fact, they all fit into fairy tale a little too well. "Mr. Rhodes asked me to summon you," she muttered with a headache. Virgo bowed again and looked to Rhodes. "My lord. This is our first meeting." Then she turned to the others. "Lady Ursa, greetings." And she hesitated for a second. Lucy quickly filled in. "This is Miss Myra." "Lady Myra, I'm honored to meet you." Virgo's tone was humble, more like a devoted servant than even when he had ever been. The others smiled kindly and returned the greeting. Rhodes explained. "I heard you're very skilled with earth magic, especially tunneling. I need you to go under that building." Virgo tilted her head. "To set a trap?" Rhodes paused. "That could work." "Wait, what do you mean that could work?" Lucy raised an eyebrow. "Did you not have a plan?" "I did," Rhodes said calmly. "Originally, I wanted Virgo to do as much structural damage as possible. Ideally, she'd tunnel beneath the whole castle and drop the entire thing. But now that I think about it, if we're short on time, a precision trap will do the job just fine." Because he'd heard that Phantom's base had a second transformation phase and could unleash devastating magic, Rhodes wasn't confident that simply destroying two legs would be enough to halt it. Better to overdo it than leave anything to chance, especially when a specialist was around. "Understood. Then, Princess, I'm heading out. Please remember to punish me later," Virgo said, giving Lucy a formal bow before vanishing into the ground with a thunk. Unlike Rhodes, who swam through the ground in his Krug form, Virgo dug a physical tunnel with precision and speed. Even after she disappeared, Lucy still mumbled. Why does she always want to be punished? But despite her complaints, she was clearly in high spirits. After following Rizza and Myra around this whole time, she finally had her own important mission. Suddenly, Rizza's expression darkened. Something's coming. The dust was too thick to see clearly, but her senses were sharp. Rhodes didn't waste time. He opened a public communication channel via Warren's telepathy. "Does anyone have a way to clear the dust?" "Leave it to me," came Alzek's voice over the channel. From a small hill overlooking the battlefield, a cluster of specialized bullets shot out one after another. They weren't aimed at enemies. They exploded harmlessly in the air around the Phantom Guild's fortress, stirring up sudden gusts. In an instant, several compact tornadoes swept across the area. They weren't strong enough to damage the terrain, but they had just enough force to blow away the lingering clouds of dust. Gun magic, hurricane rounds, non-lethal variant. Mission complete. Elzic reported calmly. Well done. Rhodes replied. As the air finally cleared, everyone could see what Rizza had sensed earlier. A massive river of blue-purple was flowing directly toward Phantom's structure. Only it wasn't a river. It was a swarm. Countless void-my eyes, each about knee-high, were crawling, hopping, and swarming in unison, heading straight for the enemy base. They climbed over debris, chewed through fallen stones, and consumed broken shards of the mechanical legs as they passed, leaving behind nothing but dust and tooth marks. It looked like a plague of locusts in motion. Thank goodness the Void Knights were well disciplined, at least enough not to chew through the ice bridge Grey had made earlier. But the moment the dust finally settled, it was like someone had flipped a switch. The worms instantly became frenzied, their movements noticeably quicker, as if they had just spotted prey. Lucy bit her finger, eyes wide with alarm. Ah! How scary! She had seen them before, back when they were helping everyone retreat, but not in numbers like this. She nearly called them disgusting, but considering they were summoned by her comrade, she changed it to scary out of respect. There had to be thousands, maybe more. In some twisted way. Mr. Rhodes was terrifying. The worms didn't need Rhodes' command anymore. The moment they arrived at Phantom's base, the first wave began climbing the supports and started gnawing without hesitation. Those behind them squeezed in wherever they could, trampling over their own kind if necessary, leaping forward in a relentless surge. Once they found any patch of untouched wall or exposed framework, they dug in with savage intensity. The rest spread outward, expanding their feeding zone like a rippling tide. It was like watching water slam into a mound of sand, some of the flow soaked into the top, others split around the sides. But with time, that mound would be reduced to nothing but sludge. Rizza watched the scene unfold and, despite knowing what to expect, couldn't help but marvel aloud. You told us how effective they were. But seeing it with my own eyes is still incredible. Rhodes smiled awkwardly. I just hope you're not grossed out. No. Myra replied gently, trying to reassure him. If you really look at them closely, they're kind of cute. In their own way. Rizza narrowed her eyes at the swarm, inspecting them for a few seconds longer, then nodded. I suppose. A little bit. Huh? Lucy also stared. A chill ran down her spine and goosebumps broke out on her arms. She didn't see any cuteness at all. Rhodes didn't know what to say. Myra was clearly trying to comfort him, but Rizza? She might have actually meant it. As the swarm surged and devoured everything in their path, Rizza turned to Rhodes again. Aren't you going to control their attack path more precisely? Rhodes shook his head. Not really an option. These little guys have pretty low intelligence. I can only give them basic orders: attack, stop, spread out. Anything more complex requires a void drub. And even then, there's a delay in execution. They don't always follow through as intended. They had strength in numbers, but that came at the cost of brains. Just then, Loke's voice rang out over the mental communication channel. There are too many enemies. We need to fall back. Go ahead. Rhodes replied calmly. The first wave of reinforcements is already here. As he spoke, a deafening crash echoed through the air. It sounded like Elfman had just transformed into his Beast King form and demolished a large section of Phantom's front gate. The resulting debris buried a chunk of the enemy forces, blocking their route of pursuit. With that, the faint team could finally catch their breath. Rhodes asked casually. How are Natsu and Grey holding up? Loke answered with a loud laugh. Busy. A fiery explosion burst from a window on the second floor of Phantom's structure. Since the building had stopped moving, it seemed Natsu was enjoying himself. Grey didn't say anything, but an ice spear suddenly shot out through a nearby window. He was probably enjoying it too. Rhodes sighed, amused. Let's move toward Natsu and Grey. I get the feeling those two are just a step away from getting themselves beat up. They started walking in that direction, only to hear Natsu's voice suddenly blare through the channel again. Whoa. Hey. These jerks set a trap on the upper floor. Damn Phantom. Everyone be careful. Chapter 343, Wave Lucy, go link up with Kana, Loke, and Elfman. Lucy looked a little unsure. Ah. Okay. Rhodes handed her 2 crystal and a magic book. Keep the magic crystal in your pocket and hold on to the spell book. Don't worry about Virgo's mission for now. If anything goes wrong, summon her back immediately. Stay safe. Got it. Lucy hugged the book tightly and sprinted off toward the Phantom Guild's main gate. Behind her, the blue-purple tide of Void Knights surged forward like a living flood, devouring every sculpture, railing, and ornamental structure surrounding the Phantom. The foundation was especially to their taste, and before long, it was riddled with gaping holes. The fastest swarm had already scaled one of the forward-facing spires. Rhodes and the others watched as tiny purple-blue specks dotted the tower's surface, spreading cracks from base to tip. The entire tower looked like a rotted tree gnawed hollow by beavers. It began to lean, and then... boom. With a thunderous crash, the spire collapsed in on itself. Some unfortunate void mites were crushed beneath the debris and vanished instantly, but those nearby simply swarmed over the wreckage and kept devouring, breaking the rubble into chewable pieces. They seemed especially fond of tower-shaped structures. There had been survivors inside. A few managed to crawl out, only to instinctively strike out at the approaching void mites. That sealed their fate. In a flash, they were swarmed. The void mites tore through their clothing, leaving them scratched and covered in wounds. Yet when the survivors collapsed and could no longer fight back, the void mites lost interest and moved on. They didn't eat people. To them, humans were bland. Towers, on the other hand, were delicious. One after another, the void mites leapt over the fallen mages like a horde of Mario characters bounding across obstacles. The spectacle was bizarrely comical. Of course, not every void mite was polite about it. Some landed square on someone's face or belly. The impact wasn't much worse than being pounced on by a hefty house cat. But they were mages, tough as steel. Surely they'd understand, and forgive the void mites for their youthful ignorance. Soon, the tide of void creatures reached the main structure of the Phantom Guild and began chewing into its corners. At that moment, the faint team, Kana, Loke, and Elfman, finally saw the first wave of reinforcements Rhodes had mentioned earlier. A tsunami of blue-purple insectoids devouring walls, towers, and rubble. It was the most horrifyingly comforting thing they'd seen all day. Kana, Loke, Elfman. Lucy called as she ran over. Are you all right? Mr. Rhodes sent me to find you. Loke instinctively tried to vanish, but realizing the battle wasn't over, he managed to keep himself from running. Kana waved her hand. We're hanging in there. Can't believe Rhodes actually sent you to the front lines. They said they were okay, but all three were clearly dusty, scuffed, and worn. It was impossible not to take a few hits when you were holding a line outnumbered 10-1. Lucy lifted the spellbook in her hands. I'm a fairy tale wizard too. I can fight. Elfman, now back in his normal form, touched the book tucked in his coat. He had been carrying one of those all along. Kana and Loke, of course, had left theirs behind, claiming it was too much trouble to lug around. Boom. Boom. Chunks of stone blocking the castle entrance were blasted away by a wave of magic from inside. From the dust and rubble, phantom soldiers came pouring out. A few of them looked like ordinary people, some unarmed, others clutching magical tools, but most wore the same uniform, stark white robes beneath dark cloaks, each wielding a single-handed sword. They poured out in a steady stream, almost endless, as if the castle itself were a factory churning them out. What? Lucy gasped. You three have been fighting this many enemies? Kana held a spread of glowing cards between her fingers, her voice serious. Those are phantom soldiers, Jose's creations. Constructs brought to life by his magic. But, we didn't realize there were this many. Loke nodded. Because the hallway inside was narrow, we only saw a few at a time. It didn't look this bad. We were never facing all of them at once. Man! Elfman shouted, fists clenched. Kana grabbed him by the collar and spun him around. Man, it's time to fall back. Let's meet up with the reinforcements while we still can. That's right. Lucy chimed in quickly. We do have reinforcements now. She dramatically pointed toward the oncoming enemy horde. Go, army of bugs, charge. A cold wind seemed to blow past her. Lucy froze, hand still extended like a general commanding troops. The void swarm, however, didn't respond. They simply continued what they were already doing, chewing through walls and towers, utterly ignoring her declaration. Lucy blinked in panic. Ah! I forgot. Mr. Rhodes did say they don't exactly follow orders. Kana sighed, rubbing her forehead. Is this what he meant when he told us to retreat? These bugs might be allies, but they're not your bodyguards. Don't expect them to keep us safe. Lucy looked lost. So, what do we do now? We run, obviously. Shouted Kana, already turning on her heel and bolting, Loke and Elfman right behind her. At that moment, a magic bullet exploded at Lucy's feet, blasting a small crater in the ground. Huh? Lucy jumped back in a panic, barely dodging a magical blast that exploded at her feet. Her eyes wide, she nearly cried out from the shock and took off running alongside the others. Just as the regular phantom mages and the summoned phantom soldiers pursued the four of them toward the advancing swarm, a few of the void mites broke formation. They bypassed the four fairy tale mages entirely, skittering at their feet without harming them, and lunged straight toward the phantom troops. Kana, Loke, Elfman, and Lucy hesitated mid-step, unsure if they should charge ahead or pull back. What the heck are those? Bugs? Ugh, that many in one place is disgusting. They're eating the guild. They're literally chewing through the walls. The phantom grunts were in chaos. "Phantom soldiers, get in there and stop them." But the artificial phantom soldiers didn't seem to respond to commands from ordinary guild members. They were focused only on their initial directive: eliminate Kana and her group. That is, until the first of them got bitten. A phantom soldier struck a void knight cleanly, reducing it to blue-purple dust. But before it could ready another strike, a dozen more swarmed its limbs and shoulders, burying it in a wriggling tide of gnashing jaws. The grinding sound of magical metal being torn apart echoed eerily across the battlefield. The soldier's armor and robes were shredded to scraps, and even its enchanted frame began to deteriorate, until it simply stopped moving and vanished entirely beneath the swarm. The Void Knights leapt toward their next target. Some of the Phantom soldiers fared better, managing to cut down several Void Knights with swords or spells. But no matter how many they felled, more surged forward, eventually burying even the strongest in a churning mass of teeth and limbs. The regular Phantom mages had it worse. Unlike the emotionless soldiers, they could feel pain, panic, and hesitation. Their fear made them falter. And hesitation in the face of this enemy meant death. Unless they retreated the moment they saw the swarm, the sea of insects would catch them, and swallow them whole. From above, the battlefield looked like an ocean of color. Black and white waves of phantom mages and soldiers collided against a relentless blue-purple tide of void mites. The front line shifted back and forth, with neither side holding ground for long. The clash was dotted with sharp bursts of color where the void knights surged upward like jagged rocks rising from crashing surf, only to fall again as the battle surged on. It was as if someone had fast-forwarded the grinding collision of tectonic plates and shrunk it down into this battlefield, two magical forces grinding away at each other, both chipping away the other's strength. But unlike nature, this clash had reinforcements on both sides. The final outcome would come down to one thing: who had more to give. Chapter 344, Air-Domain Destruction. As expected, Natsu and Grey got wrecked. The moment the two of them laid eyes on Arya, the mage representing the wind element, they didn't hesitate. They dove straight into battle. Never mind that the plan had clearly stated, whoever encountered Arya should immediately call in the mobile team for backup. That was out the window the second they realized this was the guy who ambushed Master Mikarov. Their logic? They already beat the fire guy, so how tough could the wind one be? Turns out, very. Arya's overwhelming wind magic kept them pinned down, barely able to breathe. And he hadn't even removed his blindfold yet. Natsu was hanging upside down against the wall. He gritted his teeth, planted his hands on the stone, and flipped himself back onto his feet. "Damn it!" he growled. Grey was slumped against the shattered window, using his elbows to hoist himself up. "He's way stronger than the fire guy," he admitted, panting. "They're not even in the same league." Happy had taken cover to the side, watching with wide eyes. He knew it was time to quietly call for help. Meanwhile, their opponent remained eerily composed. "My name is Arya," he said, his voice ghostly and melodramatic. "Leader of the Element 4. I have come, presumptuously, to hunt fairies." Though Arya's eyes were hidden beneath his blindfold, his palms were calmly aimed in their direction. "Ah. Fairies, dancing so stubbornly with their broken wings. You will fall to the wind. Such a sad fate." Tears began trailing from beneath the blindfold as he spoke, as if he truly mourned the very people he was trying to kill. That arrogant pity made Natsu snap. He inhaled deeply, flames rising in his throat. Fire dragons roar. But the second he unleashed the torrent of fire, Arya's body vanished like mist on the breeze. The flames struck the back wall instead, blasting a hole through stone and staining it with soot. Natsu darted forward 2 steps and looked around in frustration. Where'd he go? It was air domain dispersion, Arya's signature technique. He could silently displace himself anywhere within a certain range, vanishing into the wind. "Get down!" Grey shouted. "Ice make, knuckle fist." Natsu instinctively dove forward, and just as he did, a massive icy fist erupted from the floor behind him. But Arya was faster. Aerial art, absolute gale. The invisible shockwave smashed through Grey's ice and caught Natsu full-on in the back mid-roll, slamming him straight into the wall he had just blown open. At the same time, another gust hit Grey dead center, sending him crashing through the window and out of sight. Arya stepped forward with cold resolve, both arms extended. Aerial art, absolute gale. Disappear into the wind. Little fairies. A third shockwave, far stronger than the last, tore through the room. "Grey!" Happy screamed, his wings flapping anxiously. Natsu, bruised but still burning, scrambled to his feet and charged straight at Arya, refusing to fall. Grey's face twisted in pain, his body battered so badly that he could barely focus enough to cast. All he could do now was brace himself and endure. Suddenly, something gripped his ankle, and the world flipped upside down. A familiar voice rang out through the chaos: "Demon blast." Grey was now dangling in the air, being held up by the ankle. Blinking against the dizziness, he squinted toward the figure and exclaimed in surprise. Myra? Mara Jane, her demon form blazing with dark magic, had caught Gray with one hand. With her other hand, she aimed a glowing palm toward the window and unleashed a torrent of black and violet energy. Arya's shockwave met Myra's blast at the shattered window. The two magics collided in a blinding eruption of light and force. The remaining shards of glass exploded outward, and the stone around the window peeled off layer by layer. In an instant, the wall was blown wide open, leaving behind a hole even larger than the doorway. Poor Natsu, who had just gotten up and tried to charge again, got hit by the resulting shockwave and was flung back against the far wall. But instead of groaning, he lit up the moment he saw her. Myra. Wah-ah. Happy was clinging to the edge of the hole Natsu had made earlier, flapping helplessly in the wind like a flag on a pole. As the swirling energy settled, Myra descended gracefully to the ground on demon wings, then gently set Gray down beside her. She smiled sweetly at them, her tone light yet firm. You two, you know it's not good to go off plan and forget to report if you run into any of the element 4 inches. Natsu and Gray, who had been grinning seconds ago, immediately broke into cold sweat. We forgot. Sorry. Happy, hovering above them, looked pale. He had gone off to ask for help just now. Did that count as reporting or not? Myra's eyes narrowed as she turned toward Arya. But since it's this guy, I suppose you're forgiven. After all, this was the man who attacked Master Mikarov. Even someone as gentle as Myra couldn't let that slide without getting angry. Arya stood at the ready, still blindfolded, smiling faintly beneath his mask of sorrow. How tragic. Not just them, but even the infamous demon Mara Jane herself will fall before me. How deeply sorrowful. Despite his words dripping with grief, Arya was very clearly smiling. Gray, rubbing his shoulder, warned in a low voice. Myra, seriously, this guy's on a different level. Myra nodded calmly. Of course I know. They say he keeps his eyes shut just to suppress the overwhelming magic inside him. What? Happy squeaked, alarmed. You mean he hasn't even used his full strength yet? But Natsu and Gray already got wrecked. Who got wrecked? Natsu snapped indignantly, puffing his cheeks and clenching his fists. I just didn't get a chance to go all out yet, that's all. Arya tore off his blindfold with dramatic flair, his voice full of dark confidence. In other words, he declared, once I open my eyes, no one can defeat me. Not even a demon. But just as he opened his eyes, he was greeted by an unexpected sight, Rhodes, soaring in on a raptor, with Rosa at his side. The two landed on either side of Mara Jane. Rhodes tilted his head and smiled. Oh? What was that about opening your eyes? Arya's expression twisted in delight, tears streaming down his cheeks as his magic surged to explosive levels. This is far too tragic. The Fairy Queen and the Fairy Strategist will perish at my hands. So very, very sad. Magic pressure burst from Arya like a gale, his sheer aura ruffling everyone's hair and coats. It was overwhelming. It's him. Rosa's eyes sharpened. Her body flashed with light, and in an instant, she re-equipped into her Heaven's Wheel armor. With a swing of her arms, dozens of flying swords launched toward Arya. Airspace, sever. Arya raised one hand skyward and pointed the other forward. The barrage of swords came to a sudden halt, suspended in midair like they'd struck an invisible wall. He thrust his palm out. The air itself compressed and pushed the suspended swords back, hurtling toward Urza, Myra, and Rhodes. Myra stepped forward and punched through the current. Rhodes' left arm morphed into a gleaming dragon claw, which he drove forward, tearing through the force. Urza crossed her twin blades in a defensive X-slash and cleaved through. The invisible pressure shattered like glass. Cracks rippled through the air, followed by a brief vacuum and then a light breeze. Nothing else seemed to move. But a fierce exchange had just taken place. You actually broke through my airspace. Arya blinked, genuinely surprised. No one answered. Myra and Urza shot forward at the same time, unleashing a synchronized assault. Behind them, Rhodes quietly summoned his Brambleback and Blue Sentinel, who immediately cast red and blue buffs onto their allies. Airspace, shatter. Arya clapped his hands. A cyclone erupted around him, flinging dozens of crescent-shaped wind blades in every direction. Ice make, shield. Gray shouted, conjuring a dome of thick ice to protect himself, Natsu, and Happy. But the blades shaved off the ice layer by layer, splintering the shield until it cracked apart like broken glass. The Blue Sentinel stepped in front of them just in time, absorbing the impact. Deep cuts appeared all over its stone body, scattering rubble, but it held strong. Rhodes ducked behind the Brambleback, watching calmly as the tree monster regenerated from the slashes like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Myra deflected the slicing wind with black magic spheres whirling from her hands like meteorites. Urza advanced through the onslaught, carving a path with her swords. Her skirt and wing plating were nicked, but she pressed on without hesitation. The whirlwind died down. Arya swiftly retreated and smirked. In that case. Air domain, scatter. His body blurred and vanished like mist. Both Myra's punch and Riz's blade swept through empty air. Arya was gone. Only to reappear a heartbeat later, behind Rhodes. Feel the same pain Makarov did. Arya extended both palms, and the wind around him screamed. Air domain. Destroy. Chapter 345, Four Elements, all destroyed. Arya's palms pressed together above Rhodes' shoulders, and in an instant, a specialized airspace field snapped into existence. Take over. Rhodes froze. His magic wouldn't activate. The pressure around him felt crushing, like the very air was wringing the magic from his body, draining it outward. Rhodes. He heard Risa and Myra shout in alarm. Their panic was clear in their faces as a sharp, stinging pain began to crawl across Rhodes' skin. There was no time to think. His right index finger twitched, just enough to hook the edge of his pocket. Boom. A small explosive magic crystal, hidden there for emergencies, detonated with a sharp bang at point-blank range. Pain erupted across his hip and right side of his backside, launching him out of Arya's air trap in a smoking arc to the left. Originally meant to interrupt an enemy's spell. And now used like this. A perfectly good pair of pants ruined. But in midair, Rhodes completed the takeover and transformed. His body shifted, cloaked in thick black fur, his form becoming a towering wolf. The dense coat covered every inch, both where it should, and where it shouldn't. Arya's tall frame staggered, just briefly, but it was enough. Sensing its master had been harmed, the nearby brambleback turned with a hiss and lunged, swiping its massive claw. Arya, still recovering from the sudden explosion, barely had time to raise his arm in defense. What looked like a simple claw swipe carved 4 bloody gashes down his forearm, shredding through his sleeve and searing with pain. The blow wasn't deep, but it felt like his whole arm was about to split apart. Airspace, absolute. Arya retaliated, unleashing a shockwave that blasted Brambleback backward, flipping the massive beast onto its neck. The floor trembled under the force. He'd barely turned when Myra appeared beside him, her presence like a pressure wave of holy fury. She no longer wore her red, revealing outfit. Instead, she had transformed, cloaked in demon Halfa's form. Her new robes were flowing and white with blue trim, lined with a black cape, and hellfire licked at her boots. Arya's senses flared. She was overflowing with overwhelming power. He started to raise his hands, preparing to scatter again with airspace, dispersion. But Myra's fist was already in his face. Wug. Ag. Arya reeled, sent flying backward. Before he could land, another blow slammed into his shoulder blades. Then another into his spine. Then another into his ribs. Myra's fists pounded into his body, one after the other like a storm. She struck his back, his side, his lower back, every blow ringing out with a sickening crunch. He was like a living sandbag. Every hit left a dent, every bone screamed under the impact. His uniform shredded, flames spreading across his cloak. Then, with a final scream of fury, Myra launched him upward with a blazing kick, straight through the ceiling. Boom. He hit the upper floor, crashing through it like a meteor, then plummeted back down. Thanks to the overwhelming strength of Demon Halfas and the effect of the red buff, Arya's fingers only twitched once after hitting the ground and then stopped moving entirely. Myra hadn't spoken a single word during the entire battle, but anyone could see she had been furious. Riza's instinctive move to stand protectively in front of others ended up being unnecessary. Her armor shimmered and faded as she returned to her standard attire. Myra walked toward Rhodes in small, deliberate steps. Rhodes met her halfway, gently holding her hand with one clawed paw and using the other to pat her on the head. "I'm all right. Really? I'm not mad," Rhodes said softly. He nodded to the sentinel, which promptly refreshed Myra's buff. "Okay." Myra's tension eased as her worry melted away. "Why haven't you changed back?" "I'm waiting to find somewhere I can change my pants," Rhodes replied, one hand now protectively holding his side. "Ow! My hip." Gray stepped forward, his hand frosted over with cool mist. "Want an ice compress?" Rhodes blinked in disbelief. "Are you serious?" Gray gave a solemn nod. Rhodes shook his head. "Get lost." Notsa pulled Happy closer and muttered. "Remind me never to make Myra angry." "Aye." Happy nodded, ears lowered. He briefly considered dropping a cheeky comment about secret relationships, but thought better of it. Maybe later, with Lucy. The ground lurched violently, followed by an intense tremor. Loose debris from earlier fights fell from ceilings and cracked walls. "What now?" Notsa barked, catching his balance. Gray and Happy looked equally baffled. But Rhodes, Myra, and Riza knew exactly what was happening. The Void Knights that hadn't participated in the battle had likely chewed away at the foundations. Once the damage reached a tipping point, the whole structure began to collapse. And it was worse than expected. Throughout the entire fortress, walls were caving in, ceilings crashing down, and floors crumbling. The towering mechanical castle was suffering a chain reaction collapse from the inside out. In one hidden corridor, Virgo, who had just finished drilling a tunnel, was struck on the head by a small piece of debris. She blinked and stared at the stone now rolling across the ground. What a shame. It's not the princess punishing me. Unfazed by the growing tremors, Virgo simply went back to digging. As long as the ground didn't throw her off balance, she wasn't stopping. Lucy's magic wouldn't last forever. Time was short. Back in the control center, Joseph was beginning to lose his composure. He had deployed countless phantom soldiers to wipe out the intruders. Yet not only had they failed to neutralize Fairy Tail, they were now being overrun by a swarm of bizarre, unstoppable creatures. For a while, the two sides seemed evenly matched. If a swarm of mealworms could hold the line, what did that say about the soldiers he had painstakingly created? All soldiers, amplify your power. Jose roared. A sinister wave of dark magic pulsed from him, channeling through his living link enchantment and surging into every ghost soldier on the field. The phantom soldiers, locked in fierce combat, suddenly glowed with crimson light. Their eyes burned red, and they launched into motion, blurring with newfound speed. No, it wasn't true flight. But with how swiftly they moved and how long they stayed airborne with each leap, it looked like low-altitude gliding. And now, as they swept through the swarm mid-glide, they slashed down wave after wave of void worms. The tide of battle on the ground was beginning to shift as more and more worms were shredded and cast aside. Worse yet, the phantom soldiers had begun bypassing the worms entirely, lunging directly toward the mages behind the front lines. Elfman stepped forward without hesitation. With a powerful roar, he met the attackers head-on, punching through their blades. Even enhanced, they couldn't overpower him, but their sheer numbers were a problem. Kana moved with confident ease. Her experience in battle showed through with each well-timed card strike, and she even managed to glance sideways at Loke to make sure he was holding up. But Lucy was struggling. Startled, she instinctively swung her whip, but it barely made the soldier flinch. He raised his blade to strike. In a blur, Loke appeared and shoved her out of the way. The blade slashed his arm, and blood dripped down from a shallow wound. Loke! Lucy cried, her voice trembling. Loke kicked the enemy back, gritting his teeth through the pain. Don't worry. This is nothing. Kana pressed a hand to her ear crystal. Rhodes. Something's changed. The phantom soldiers are stronger. Loke's hurt. And the worm swarm's having a tough time. Rhodes' voice answered calmly through the shared channel. Don't worry. A super reliable team just arrived. We're here. Came a confident shout. Everyone, move in. Let's show those phantoms what real fairy tale mages can do. Reinforcements. Their comrades had arrived. A wave of relief swept through the group. Kana, Lucy, Elfman, even Loke smiled. Rhodes had been right, there was no need to panic when Fairy Tail moved as one. But in the Phantom Guild's control room, Jose's expression had soured. A green glowing magic crystal on the console flickered, and then went out completely. It was one of the 4 conduits that transferred magic from the 4 elements. This one had been linked to Arya. Next to it, 3 more crystals, red, yellow, and blue flickered ominously. These 4 were crucial. They were supposed to serve as fuel for the ultimate spell. Losing even one source would prevent its activation. Joseph's hand trembled. Arya is defeated too? He gritted his teeth, eyes blazing in disbelief. The 4 elements, and Gagiel, all taken down by those fairy tale brats? Impossible. Chapter 346, Jose Porla the Wizard Saint. A phantom soldier lunged at Loke, but before it could reach him, a magic bullet struck it midair. The blast sent the soldier flying before it crashed to the ground and was instantly swallowed up by the advancing swarm of void knights. Was that Visca? Loke murmured, stunned. Visca's playful voice echoed through the shared communication crystal. If we let that happen again, the sniper team's reputation is done for. We'll cover you from now on. Everyone, go all out. Oh. A cheer erupted across the battlefield. Fairy Tail's mages were strong. But more than that, they were reliable. The kind of comrades who could be trusted to guard your back in battle. That was a trust forged in fire and battle. Thanks for looking after our little rookies. Macau called out with a grin. Now it's our turn. Purple Skynet. He spread his fingers wide. Purple flames spiraled forward, weaving into a burning net that captured over a dozen phantom soldiers mid-leap. Here's a return gift. Smoke barrage. Wakaba puffed his pipe furiously, unleashing a massive cloud of white-gray smoke. The smoke congealed into ghostly fists that slammed into the phantom soldiers mid-glide, knocking them into the swarm below. Would make, passion storm. Loki pressed her palms to the earth. Strange wooden constructs burst from the ground, chains, whips, even spiked cages and twisted blood-dripping spears. The shapes alone were enough to make an enemy flinch. "I'll copy Rhodes' summons." Rita waved his magical paintbrush and quickly scrawled 2 groups of merc wolves across his stomach. The drawings leapt off his skin, 6 massive wolves sprang to life and pounced toward the phantom forces. "Seath magic. Tiger soul." Nab roared as a spectral tiger appeared around him, echoing his attack. Each strike of his fists was amplified by the fierce growl and swipe of phantom claws. The newly arrived comrades surged forward, unleashing their spells in waves. Anger, vengeance, and loyalty blazed behind every strike. Phantom soldiers fell in droves, and everyone knocked to the ground was instantly engulfed by the void worms. None escaped once downed. Some fairy tale members, too far to strike in close quarters, gritted their teeth and hurled explosive magic crystals toward the enemy. Booming explosions rocked the phantom's buildings. Towering walls cracked, windows shattered, and more sections of the ghostly fortress came crashing down. The swarm had already chewed away half the castle. Rhodes and his team regrouped near the main gate. He had finally swapped out his shredded pants, using his requip magic knit sprint. Situations like these had unexpectedly helped him refine his spellcraft. "Rhodes." Natsu ran up, fire burning in his fists. "Are we going after Jose now?" Rhodes shook his head. "Not yet. We move step by step. First, take out the key structures. Then we clean up the rest." To Rhodes, Jose was the final boss of a dungeon. There was no point charging in before clearing the mobs and disabling every trap. But not everything went according to plan. Before they could advance, a strange, suffocating pressure swept over them like a wave. Everyone froze. The air itself thickened with magic. The free-floating particles twisted into ghostly wraiths, spiraling ominously around the battlefield. It was a magic aura so evil, so oppressive, that even those who didn't specialize in sensing magic could feel the chill. This can't be," Gray muttered, eyes wide. "Is that magic?" Urza's gaze narrowed, her grip tightening around her sword. "Only one person gives off magic like this." A figure emerged from the crumbling ruins, a middle-aged man, cloaked in blue and violet robes. His eyebrows arched upward in sharp curves. Thick black eyeliner circled his eyes like runes. His lips were painted a deep purple, framed by a thin mustache that curled down like a doorframe. Around him swirled shadows, no, spirits, countless resentful souls clinging to his very aura. The mere sight of him twisted the stomach. This man radiated nothing but malevolence. The moment they felt that cold, sticky, and repulsive magic, everyone instinctively recoiled. Urza gritted her teeth and spoke the name like venom, "Jose. You've really outdone yourselves, little pests." Jose said as he clapped mockingly, his voice dripping with disdain. "I never imagined you'd amuse me this much." The same man who had raged over the defeat of the Element Four now spoke like a man thoroughly entertained. The shift in tone made their skin crawl. Suppressing the nausea caused by Jose's vile aura, Rhodes took a deep breath and assessed the situation. This was one of the possibilities. He muttered. "I didn't want to face him this early, but it's better than the worst-case scenario." The worst case? Jose leading the Element Four and their army from the front lines. For him to show up only now meant they'd been spared the absolute worst. But it also meant something else. Jose was confident. Supremely confident. So confident, in fact, that he believed with Makarov down, he could take on all of Fairy Tail alone. Rhodes clutched the pendant around his neck, preparing to activate his buffs. No other choice now. "We fight." Natsu cracked his knuckles with a wild grin. "Hey. Just the way I like it." Gray rolled his shoulders and gave a sharp smirk. "Either way, we were always gonna throw down with this guy." But Myra and Urza were far less relaxed. Their expressions were grim. "Don't let your guard down," Myra warned. "This man has power on par with Master Makarov," Urza said coldly. Jose threw his head back in a twisted laugh. "You seriously think you stand a chance? I'll crush you one by one. Then I'll drag Lucy back and bleed the Heartfilia fortune dry. And Phantom Lord will finally become the #1 guild in Fiore." As he raised his hand, ghostly magic coiled around his arm like a living shadow. Purple spheres materialized at the tips of each finger, 5 in total, pulsing with dark energy. Rhodes' expression changed in an instant. "Move!" he shouted. But in his haste, he only managed to grab Happy's tail. Myra grabbed Natsu by the collar, Urza snatched Gray by the arm, and together they leapt backward with incredible speed. The spot where they had just been standing exploded with a deafening roar as 5 purple beams of magic tore through the floor. Chunks of shattered stone erupted upward like geysers. Half of the debris was launched into the air, while the rest broke through the floor and rained down to the level below. 5 massive holes, each nearly 2 meters wide, intersected across the corridor, splitting it apart entirely. Through the gaping breach, the lower floor was clearly visible, along with the chaos below. Jose's casual strike had shaken the entire building to its core. Just then, a hole burst open in the wall, and a pink-haired maid popped her head through, her voice sweet and composed despite the crumbling wreckage. "Everyone, I've finished destroying several load-bearing walls on this floor and the one beneath it. Combined with the adorable little bugs chewing away down there and the recent impact, this entire building is about to collapse. I suggest you find shelter immediately." Virgo. Natsu blinked in surprise, then his eyes narrowed. "So you were the one digging holes upstairs? I knew that smell was familiar, you little..." Virgo tilted her head, completely unfazed. "Would you like to punish me, Lord Natsu?" "I will." Gray grabbed Natsu by the scarf and yanked him back. "Idiot. Not the time for that. The building is coming down, focus." "Run?" Jose interrupted with a twisted grin, his fingers glowing ominously. "Where do you think you're going to run, now?" But then he froze. The floor beneath Jose's feet gave way with a thunderous crack. "What the?" He plummeted through the collapsing structure, his expression one of shock as the ceiling began caving in above him. Every wall in sight split like parchment, the entire structure groaning and breaking apart. Chapter 347, Why haven't Phantom's reinforcements arrived yet? Virgo's warning came just a little too late. Maybe even she hadn't expected Jose to be so ruthless, to bring down his own guild just to trap Fairy Tail. By unleashing that last attack, he had slammed the final straw onto an already crumbling tower. The Phantom Lord Guild collapsed like a house of cards. Not only did the ground give way beneath Jose, but the entire floor beneath Rhodes and the others disappeared out from under their feet. They didn't dare fly. They were only on the second floor, after all, and falling from here was safer than risking an upward blast that might launch them into the collapsing structure itself. Virgo, who had popped halfway out of the wall just moments ago, plummeted with the shattered debris. But before she hit the ground, her body shimmered with golden light and vanished, returning to the celestial spirit world. "What?" Natsu shouted as he fell. "The gorilla maid bailed on us. That's betrayal." Happy tumbled like a startled kitten. I'm gonna get crushed. This is the end." Gray briefly considered forming an ice dome, either to cushion the blow or freeze whatever might land on his head. Mirza and Myra had already mapped out a counter-strike plan in their minds. They'd either blast the debris above or smash it into dust after landing, but the issue was the battlefield below. If too much rubble rained down, it could harm their allies outside. Rhodes had a simpler plan. If flying wasn't an option, they'd burrow. He could summon the mountain dragon here. But he didn't dare. One strange thing had nagged at him throughout this entire battle. Something he hadn't spoken aloud. Where were the rest of Phantom Lord's forces? Unlike Fairy Tail, which was a single guild, Phantom had more than 30 branches. If even 20 people came from each, that was over 600 wizards. 600 mages showing up would turn the whole battlefield into chaos, no matter how weak they were individually. And yet, no reinforcements had come. Which was strange. If Rhodes summoned the dragon now, he'd have to withdraw from the fight himself. If Jose proved too powerful for even the dragon to hold back, or if the summoning drained too much magic, the Void Knights would vanish too. And then if those phantom reinforcements did arrive, it would be disastrous. Better to solve things the conservative way. Just as everyone hit the ground, Krugs forth from the earth beneath them. 2 of Rhodes' ancient Krugs split into smaller ones, and together they grabbed Rhodes, Natsu, Gray, Myra, Mirza, and even Happy, and quickly pulled them underground. They disappeared into the earth just as the thunder of destruction echoed above. As Risa and Myra had feared, the outside fighters were immediately affected by the collapse. Phantom Lord's headquarters had been built using reinforced stone and rare magical metals. Add in the complex internal systems, devices, and lacrima crystals used to power its movement and transformation. And the whole structure went up like a chain reaction. Flames exploded across the battlefield. Stone debris flew in all directions. Shockwaves rippled outward. What had moments ago been a mighty castle was now reduced to a smoldering heap of shattered ruin. In the blink of an eye, Phantom Lord's stronghold had fallen. A significant number of the Void Knights that participated in the destruction vanished, either crushed beneath the collapse or wiped out in the resulting explosion. But the rest kept moving. Even the disappearance of their kin didn't seem to affect their hunger or enthusiasm. They simply scattered in all directions, jumping and chewing into whatever rubble remained. Fairy Tail members and Phantom mages alike were staggered by the aftershocks, struggling to keep their footing. Only the Phantom soldiers pressed on, unfazed by the destruction. Their movements were slightly hindered, but they charged ahead relentlessly, weapons raised, ready to cut down anyone in their path. Several Fairy Tail mages were on the verge of being overwhelmed. until two streaks of smoke split through the air. One bullet scattered mid-flight into 7 separate projectiles, each one homing in on a phantom soldier with pinpoint precision. The other curved through the battlefield in a zigzag motion, piercing through one phantom soldier after another. Elzic's gun magic, split bullet. Biska's sniper magic, auto-tracking round. Biska's voice rang out across the battlefield through telepathic link. The assault team and mobile squad did their job. Now it's your turn. Show me the firepower of the general attack team. Macau raised his fist. She's right. Let's finish off these punks. Oh! Came the thunderous roar of their comrades. Some in the ranks still worried for those who had been inside the collapsing phantom headquarters. But then again, those specific fairy tale mages had a reputation. After all, who exactly had fallen in with the rubble? Myra. Mirza. Natsu. Gray. And Rhodes. Nobody was panicking. Those 5 weren't the type to go down easily. With newfound morale, Fairy Tale's attack surged forward. Wave after wave of magic tore through the remaining Phantom soldiers. Their numbers began to drop rapidly. It was clear now. Phantom Lord was on the ropes. Boom. Suddenly, a powerful explosion blasted outward from the center of the collapsed guild hall. Chunks of masonry, steel, magical lacrima, and debris burst into the sky like fireworks, along with a few unlucky blue-purple void knights who were launched alongside the rubble. And then, rising atop the highest pile of ruin, was Jose, the Phantom Lord Guild Master. He looked furious. Though not physically injured, his expression twisted with shame and rage. One of the 10 wizard saints, buried alive by a swarm of insects and a collapsing guild hall. The humiliation Jose felt wasn't from his guild being demolished, it was from the shame of being buried alive by a bunch of upstart mages. Buildings could be rebuilt. Once he acquired the Heartfilia fortune, he'd construct a new guild far grander than before. But losing face like this? That was unacceptable. To turn this around, he needed to crush every last fairy tale mage here and now, then go deal with Makarov wherever that old fool was hiding. Jose's magic erupted in full. The oppressive force of a wizard saint flooded the battlefield, sending a chilling wave through the air. The fairy tale mages froze mid-fight, glancing toward the source of the suffocating pressure. Mikau's eyes widened. That's Jose, the guild master of Phantom Lord. Wakaba scanned the area in alarm. Where are Rosa and Myra? Lucy covered her mouth, struggling to breathe. It's not just strong. This magic feels rotten. Like it's alive. Like it wants to tear us apart. But the Void Knights were undeterred. The blue-purple swarm didn't hesitate. As Jose swept aside rubble and stomped across the ruins, the worms surged forward, eager to devour this new intruder. Jose flicked his wrist. Inky purple arrows of magic streaked through the air, riddling the worms mid-leap. Explosions bloomed as their bodies burst apart. Stone and dust flew from the craters left behind. It wasn't even a spell, it was just a gesture. A wizard saint. That's the power of the 10 holy mages. Someone cried. Jose sneered. Power? He turned toward the battered phantom mages cowering behind Fairy Tale's ranks. Master Jose, help us. The phantom grunts shouted in desperation. But Jose only looked at them with disdain. Pathetic insects. If you've lost, then die with the fairies. A guild master isn't here to babysit failures. He raised his palm. Ghostly energy surged into a sphere of writhing purple. A complex magic circle formed beneath his feet, then the energy launched outward in a spiraling wave of destruction. The ground was shredded beneath the blast. Stone was pulverized, earth was ripped away, and a storm of debris rocketed across the battlefield. The spiral gouged deep furrows into the soil, drawing closer and closer to Fairy Tale's front line. The shockwave hadn't even reached them yet, and already the winds were too strong to see through. The pressure in the air made it impossible to breathe. The remaining phantom mages turned pale. Jose's spell didn't discriminate. He'd destroy friend and foe alike. The sniper team tried to intervene. Magic bullets shrieked from the distance, Elzic's split shot, Biska's guided rounds, but they were swallowed by the spiral blast as if they were nothing. Then a blur shot out from beneath the rubble. Mirza burst from the collapsing ruins, clad head to toe in her heaviest set of armor. Gleaming plates of black and silver covered her body, and 2 massive shields merged into a singular barrier before her. A golden defense circle formed just as Jose's attack arrived. Mirza. Chapter 348, Gang Fight. Mirza stood firm at the front, her massive magic circle held high above her like a shield. The enchanted circle, nearly 20 meters wide, glowed brightly as it bore the full brunt of Jose's dark purple magic torrent. It was like a reef standing strong against crashing waves, shielding everyone behind her. The torrent of energy slammed into the armor's barrier, unleashing a blinding light, but it failed to break through. Though the ground to either side of Mirza was torn apart, deep trenches gouged by the spiraling force, The area directly behind her was left untouched, raised half a foot higher than the rest. Urza separated her shield and staggered back 2 steps. It was clear the spell had taken its toll on her, but she hadn't yielded. The Phantom Lord members behind her stood in stunned silence. They hadn't died. Some dropped their weapons in disbelief, others collapsed to their knees, and more turned and fled the battlefield in a panic. Only a few Phantom soldiers pressed forward. Fairy Tail wanted to cheer for Urza's incredible defense, but Rhodes appeared suddenly and cut in. Finish off the remaining enemies. Prepare for the final battle. Natsu and Gray were present, but Myra and Happy hadn't surfaced yet. Understood. Warren, get over here now. On it. Warren rushed over and let Rhodes rest his hand on his shoulder. Sniper team, fire in salvos with stun rounds. Loke, move. Summon, Blue Sentinel. Rhodes gave a string of rapid commands. 2 sentinels materialized beside him. One followed Natsu, the other accompanied Gray and bolstered them with the buff. Kana. Let's go. The sentinels placed buff atop the heads of the chosen fighters. The moment they felt the magical boost, they leapt into action. Loke, arm freshly bandaged, stepped up behind Urza and lifted his ring. A brilliant beam of light shone from the gem and aimed directly at Jose's face. Humphrey. Petty tricks. Jose sneered and raised his cloak to block the glare. He waved his other hand forward, sending a jagged bolt of purple lightning at Loke. Not so fast. Urza lunged left and blocked the lightning with half of her shield, grunting from the force of the hit. Simultaneously, the sniper team's barrage exploded around Jose, lighting up the battlefield, and Loke's ring intensified, dazzling the dark mage. Then the assault trio made their move. Winds of Fate, heavenly lightning blades. Kana shouted, hurling 6 glowing cards. 3 spun into massive scything wind blades, while the other 3 burst into thick arcs of crackling lightning and surged straight toward Jose. Ice Make, Ice Cannon. Gray formed a cannon-shaped ice weapon on his arm, crouched into firing stance, and unleashed a focused ice shell that tore across the battlefield like a beam of light. The recoil sent him sliding back as the blast homed in on Jose's left flank. Fire Dragon's Roar. Natsu stood tall, took a deep breath, and cupped his hands together into a tunnel. Using perfect form, he unleashed a massive, focused stream of fire from his mouth. The flames roared like a jet engine, forming a cone-shaped torrent of heat that scorched forward toward Jose's right side. Jose's vision was blinded by the intense light, and the stun rounds disrupted his hearing, but he still reacted instantly. With a flick, he released the cloak shielding his face. Then, stretching both arms forward, he sharply flung them outward. The 2 purple-black spheres of magic in his hands elongated like elastic bands into broad arcs. Arc of Darkness. Twin crescent waves of corrupt energy surged forward. Positioned higher on the ruins, Jose cast the attack diagonally downward. The arcs collided with every incoming attack, slicing through Kana's wind blades, dispelling her thunder strikes, fracturing Gray's ice shell, and breaking apart Natsu's flaming breath. But the energy didn't stop there. The crescent waves swept forward, unstoppable, like guillotines ready to split the battlefield itself. Urza, standing firm, merged her twin shields once more. The tremendous force forced her back a step, sparks grinding beneath her armored boots. The summoned sentinels shielding Natsu and Gray had their stone legs carved open with deep gashes nearly 3 inches deep. Elfman. Myra. Wakaba. Rhodes' voice echoed mentally, carried directly to their minds. Smoke Shadow. Wakaba puffed from his pipe, sending a basketball-sized cloud of thick, gray smoke hurtling toward Jose. The smoke expanded midair and wrapped around Jose's head, clouding his vision and ears again. Man. Elfman charged in with 2 pounding strides, leaped over the front line, and midair activated Beast Soul, King of Beasts. In a blur, he crossed the battlefield, landing with a ground-shaking stomp. In the next heartbeat, he lunged, slamming a boulder-sized fist toward Jose's face. Jose raised a clawed hand, catching the fist, but his forearm visibly trembled under the force. The blow nearly buckled into his own face. Ridiculous brute strength. Jose hissed, forcing a smile. Let me repay you with the most exquisite pain, Dark Erosion. Darkness crawled from Jose's palm like a living serpent, slithering along Elfman's fist and rapidly creeping up his arm. Even after pulling away, the cursed energy continued clinging to him like a ghostly leech. Elfman's expression twisted in pain. Myra activated her Satan Soul. Black Daemon wings erupted from her back, flaring with raw power before folding in tight. Her descent accelerated, her eyes locked onto her target. Her fist, surrounded in crackling dark energy, came crashing down onto Jose's head. There was no time for him to dodge. The blow connected cleanly. The Holy Wizard was sent crashing headfirst into the ruins. The impact caved in the top of the debris pile, burying Jose deeper beneath stone and steel. The cursed shadow magic infecting Elfman's arm vanished instantly, and Wakaba's lingering smoke cloud dispersed in the aftermath. At that moment, the last of the phantom soldiers fell. The battlefield fell into momentary silence. "All right." Someone began to shout, but Rhodes cut in sharply through the communication link. "Myra, Elfman, fall back. Everyone. Prepare barrage magic. Fire all explosive magic crystals. Now." Myra grabbed Elfman by the arm and soared away as ordered. Then came the storm. Fireballs, freezing blasts, smoke bombs, enchanted wood, razor-sharp wind blades, chains of lightning, flying swords, black magic bullets, and enchanted detonation crystals. A kaleidoscope of destruction rained down on the ruins like a magical apocalypse. The crashing explosions and elemental fury lit the sky like fireworks. The highest part of the rubble was vaporized into a crater, and the remains of the Phantom Guild were reduced to dust. A normal enemy would have been obliterated without a trace. But Rhodes didn't celebrate. "All teams, stay in formation. Withdraw with caution and prepare for a follow-up engagement." When the assault ceased, something began to stir in the epicenter of the crater. A shimmering black and purple dome, a magical barrier, rose from the devastation. Inside stood Jose, the Phantom Guild master. He was a wreck. His long hair, once tied neatly, now hung in tangled strands across his forehead. A deep gash marked his brow, blood trickling down one side of his face. His lips were split, blood pooling at the corner of his mouth. His once regal cloak and robes were shredded. Both arms were lacerated and covered in blood. His trousers were torn into uneven shorts, and one of his boots was missing. His legs were cut and bruised, barely holding his frame upright. As the barrier faded, Jose hung limply for a moment. His head was bowed, his body hunched. Arms dangled at his sides like a marionette without strings. Then came the sound. "Hey! Hee hee hee!" His twisted laughter echoed from the pit. When he looked up, his face was contorted with rage. His smile was monstrous. "Well done. You little pests really did it, huh?" A sickly aura of black-purple light coiled around Jose's body like living shadow. His magical pressure surged, so dense it distorted the air around him like heat waves from a furnace. It wasn't just magic. It felt like a swarm of evil spirits had been unleashed. Fairy Tale's little demons. With a sudden bang, the earth beneath his feet cratered just from the force of his presence. No spell. No motion. Just his killing intent. Even those who had merely found him repulsive before now felt something else entirely. Terror. For mages with weaker magic power, like Lucy, dread gripped their hearts like a freezing vice. Chapter 349, Trust Everyone, Prepare for Defense. Sniper Team, switch to armor-piercing rounds. Even though Rhodes relayed the order directly into everyone's minds using telepathy, it still came a second too late. From the front of Jose, 3 towering waves of purple-black energy, each more than 3 meters high, surged forward in succession like a demonic tide. The shattered remains of the ruins were pushed aside instantly, and the waves carried a storm of stone and debris as they hurtled toward the members of Fairy Tale. Acting swiftly, Rhodes transformed his hands into dragon claws and slammed them into the ground. A towering stone wall, 5 meters high and over a meter thick, erupted from the earth, rising between the oncoming wave and the Fairy Tale formation. "Gray. Lucky. Dono," he called. The rubble crashed against the stone wall, breaking apart and scattering, but the first wave of magic slammed into it and cracked the wall with a deafening boom before it finally burst apart. Ice Make, Shield. Wood Make, Guardian of Love. Gray and Lucky followed up immediately, erecting an ice wall and a wooden barricade behind the now crumbled stone wall. Tano, a newer member who had only joined Fairy Tale earlier that year, hesitated slightly, half a beat behind the others, but still managed to raise his spell in time. "Light Guardian," he called, pressing his hands together. A halo of soft blue light spread from his body, layering itself protectively over Gray's ice wall. The final remnants of the first wave of energy dissipated harmlessly against the light barrier. But the second wave crashed forward immediately, breaking through Tano's shield of light, melting the thick ice wall, splintering the wooden defense, and pressing on with relentless force. Mirza raised her great shield once again, while Myra placed a hand on her shoulder, casting a black defense spell that overlaid Riz's magic circle with a thin, dark barrier. The second wave slammed into their combined defense, and shattered. But the third wave was the largest. The strongest. It bore down on them like a mountain collapsing into the sea. "You're not getting past us," Myra and Riza shouted in unison. Once fierce rivals, today they stood together, guarding everyone behind them. 2 streams of brilliant blue magic spiraled around them, amplifying their power. Ha! The 2 unleashed a joint roar, unleashing the full force of their magic. The third wave collided with their barrier in a brilliant flash. And finally dissipated. Their barrier shattered, and the defensive circle crumbled. Myra and Riza were thrown backward, Rhodes caught Myra mid-fall, while Kenna caught Rizzo with a sliding tackle. The wind howled around them from the lingering magic. Even the weakened remnants of Jose's spell were strong enough to knock people off their feet. Some began to falter. A few members looked shaken, frightened. That monstrous attack had taken nearly everyone working in unison just to repel it. Can we really win this? That silent fear rippled through the crowd. Through Warren's magic, those doubts transmitted directly into Rhodes' mind, dozens of inner voices whispering their unease. The weight on Rhodes' shoulders grew heavier. These comrades had entrusted their lives to him, placing their trust in his leadership. He couldn't fail them. He wouldn't fail them. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, someone else beat him to it. A voice rang out, brimming with fire and faith. "Don't be stupid." Natsu shouted. "We stopped it, didn't we? That was a saint-level attack, and we stopped it. If we're together, nothing can beat us." He grinned through the dust and exhaustion, fists clenched, fire blazing behind his eyes. "We'll show him what fairy tale's made of." Natsu. "Yeah. He's right. We blocked it. And now Jose's the one on the ropes. Well done." Rhodes gave silent praise to Natsu, forcing himself to stay calm. With a steady breath, he issued the next command: "Commence attack plan C. Everyone, move to your assigned positions." As expected of a wizard saint, Jose's combat ability left almost no opening. After testing various elemental magics, fire, ice, lightning, wind, even divine light, Rhodes came to a troubling conclusion: Jose had no clear elemental weakness. He wasn't just immune to basic counters, his magic had an overwhelming edge even against traditionally opposing attributes. Even though he wielded dark element magic, he shrugged off light and thunder spells with barely a reaction. If he had a flaw at all, it wasn't his magic, but his body. His physical resilience wasn't much higher than a regular S-class mage. If you could land a hit before he activated a defense spell, his body wouldn't withstand it just through raw mana alone. That's where Rhodes' Brambleback came in. Once an attack broke through, it would hurt. So the strategy was clear. Overwhelm him. Control the space. And when the moment comes, strike. Most of Fairy Tale's strike force had already repositioned, retreating to a wider perimeter. The distance was enough to keep them safe from Jose's unpredictable area of effect magic, while still giving them time to move in for backup or ranged support. At the front line, Myra, Ursa, and Natsu stood shoulder to shoulder. Two towering sentinels flanked them, guarding their flanks like twin stone guardians. Rhodes and Warren stood at center formation, acting as the command hub. Gray and Elfman held both wings, and Kanna brought up the rear, her magic cards already glowing between her fingers. Jose didn't immediately launch another attack. He couldn't. From the skies above, more than a dozen sniper bullets rained down, their trajectory laser-precise, aimed straight at his head, throat, heart, and other vital spots. At the same time, a new wave of void knights burst forward behind him, swarming like blue-purple hailstones with fangs. Jose twisted his body sharply, evading the bullets with just 2 sidesteps. With a violent flick of his right arm, a serpent-like torrent of dark magic lashed out, coiling and snapping, consuming the void knight's midair with a flare of shadow fire. But that motion cost him. The wound on his right shoulder, already split from earlier, tore wider with the sudden movement. A few dark droplets of blood hit the stone floor and sizzled from the dark magic still coursing through his veins. His lips curled into a snarl. Eyes locked on Rhodes, this damn kid who kept barking orders like some battlefield general. That smug little upstart. Definitely the one who'd led the trap that buried him. He would be the first to die. Jose casually tucked his right hand behind his back. Unseen, a thin stream of purple-black magic dripped from his fingers like oily ink, seeping quietly into the broken ground. Lightning and wind magic. Those familiar with the elements immediately began chanting. Others quickly flipped through their magic books, searching for the right spell. But before any spells could be cast, a sudden explosion erupted beneath Rhodes and Warren's feet. Ah! A burst of purple-black flame detonated beneath them. Gray and Elfman were caught in the shockwave and blasted to the sides, while Kanna was thrown backward with a yelp. Rhodes and Warren, standing at the heart of the blast, were hurled into the air, only to be saved by 2 Krugs bursting up from underground. The Krugs split apart under the force of the explosion, shielding them just long enough to minimize damage. The 2 were rattled, but still okay. Gray, Elfman, and Kanna, though bruised and a little bloodied, quickly shouted, "Don't worry about us, keep attacking." Truthfully, Rhodes had planned to launch a surprise underground attack after Myra's aerial strike. But to his annoyance, Jose had already anticipated it and used the strategy first. Even now, in his rage, Jose could still think tactically. A testament to why he was one of the 10 wizard saints. In response, Fairy Tale's lightning and wind users fired spell after spell toward Jose. But Rhodes didn't even stop to check if the attacks landed. He was already issuing the next wave of instructions. Vijster. Joey. Exhilaration dance. Vijster stepped forward, lifted both arms above his head in a flashy pose, then spun into an energetic routine, one hand forward, one behind, his movements full of rhythm. As he moved, a rebellious blue light radiated from him, coating every nearby ally in a soft azure aura. It was a rare and powerful support spell, amplifying their battle capabilities. Then came Joey, his muscles bulging, who struck a sequence of bodybuilding poses beside Vijster. In an instant, Myra, Ursa, Natsu, and even Rhodes found their arms and legs bulked up with exaggerated muscle mass. It looked ridiculous. But it felt amazing. Joey's spell boosted their raw physical strength, and despite its odd aesthetics, its effects were immediate and undeniable. These two support spells were the signal. Now was the time to strike. Ursa and Myra surged forward with renewed power. By now, Jose had already raised a protective barrier to absorb the barrage of lightning and wind magic. In his hands, purple-black serpents of magic coiled and hissed. Red buff. Rhodes shouted, casting buffs onto Ursa and Myra. At the same time, he barked his next command, all fire magic, focus on Natsu. Then, pointing toward Jose, he called out, Warren, sound magic. Overload his senses. Chapter 350, We Won. Jose is a complete moron. The weakest of the 10 wizard saints. Small pp what's 1000-7? A loser who got buried in the ruins not once, but twice. Warren dramatically pointed at his forehead like a blade with one hand, and aimed his other hand straight at Jose, unleashing every insult Rhodes had ever taught him, and adding plenty more from his own creativity. His words echoed directly inside Jose's mind. To be honest, Warren felt kind of bad. This move was seriously cruel. He half expected Jose to snap his neck the next second, but this was war, and Warren would do anything to help his friends win. Jose's mind reeled in confusion. What in the name of Zeref is this? Who weaponizes telepathy like this? Furious, he glared at Warren. With his vast reservoir of magic power and deep magical knowledge, he forcefully severed the connection with a jolt of will. But the window of opportunity had already opened. Ursa, now clad in her fairy armor, a radiant pink armor representing the guild itself, was already in motion. Green lightning crackled along her blade. The glowing red aura of the buff swirled around the tip of her sword, igniting it in roaring flame. Just as Jose shook off Warren's interference, Ursa's blade pierced through the black serpent of dark magic coiling around his left hand and thrust straight toward his chest. On the opposite side, Myra had fully entered her Satan soul form. Her right hand had transformed into a claw wreathed in hellfire. Reinforced by the red buff, she tore through the black serpent in Jose's right hand and clamped her burning grip around his throat. Jose grunted, straining with all his might. With his left hand, he seized Ursa's blade to halt its advance. With his right, he latched onto Myra's wrist to stop her from crushing his windpipe. But it was too late. Ursa's sword had already stabbed deep into his chest. The crackling lightning surged into his muscles. The red flames from the enchantment surged into his bloodstream. Blood erupted from the wound, soaking through his shredded robes. Even the palm that caught the sword was slashed open and smoking. Myra's claws dug deep into both sides of his neck. Her grip tightened, choking the air from his lungs. Her claws burned like embers and sliced like blades, embedding painful crimson lines along his throat. Jose's right hand burned against Myra's wrist. The flames of hell scorched his skin as if branding his soul. The pain in his neck mirrored the fury in his chest. Damn. Brats. Jose roared, his face twisted with malice. His clear darkened completely, leaving only black pits for eyes. Magic surged through him, raw, wild, and corrupted. From each of his palms burst enormous purple-black orbs, nearly 2 meters wide. They ballooned outward in a blink, engulfing both Myra and Ursa in pulsating, corrosive darkness. The two women screamed in unison, racked by unbearable pain as the sphere seared and tore at their bodies with demonic force. But neither one of them let go. Neither would yield. Ursa clenched her teeth, eyes blazing with determination. Her heels dug into the dirt, forming small craters beneath her feet. With every fiber of her being, she pushed forward. Myra's arms trembled as the hellfire around her surged hotter and wilder. She gritted her teeth, straining with all her might to tighten her grip around Jose's neck. Jose was on the verge of suffocating. His hand seared with pain, his breath was ragged, but he didn't stop. He pushed his magic harder than ever, pouring all his power into the swirling darkness in a desperate attempt to overwhelm both Ursa and Myra. He had the advantage in raw magic power. If it continued like this, Ursa and Myra might be the ones to fall. But just as the pressure reached its peak, a figure shot out from the ground behind Jose like a spear of hope. Rhodes. In the blink of an eye, he took over the mountain dragon form, his body crackling with magic. He pulled back his right fist, His frame coiled like a drawn bowstring, gathering all the power he had. The amplification magic from Vegeta, the muscle enchantment from Joey, red buff blazing around him, Rhodes poured it all into this one strike. Behind him, his friends held their breath. And then, he unleashed Mountain Dragon's collapsing strike. The punch tore through the air like a comet trailing fire, like a mountain compressed into a single blow. With explosive force, it smashed into the back of Jose's head. The impact rippled outward. The dark spheres that had enveloped Myra and Urza shattered. The oppressive energy Jose had been radiating vanished. The choking darkness was gone. The cursed, suffocating air lifted. Urza's sword tip drove forward, tearing a deep wound across Jose's chest. Myra's burning claws carved red gashes along his neck. But the two of them, their strength depleted and bodies battered by the earlier counterattack, fell to the ground. Jose's body twisted as he was sent flying like a broken kite, his limbs slack and his eyes rolled back. But the fight wasn't over yet. Above, the sniper team fired volley after volley of flaming bullets toward Natsu. Mikau hurled a blazing blast of violet fire. Kana flung a brilliant card that exploded midair like a small sun. Solar detonation. Lucy, and all the others who couldn't use fire magic, flipped open their grimoires and cast every flame-based spell they could find. Natsu stood tall, arms open, grinning. "I'll take all of your fire." He opened his mouth, and devoured every ounce of their combined flames. "I accept it all, your flames, your strength." High above, as Jose's body twisted mid-flight, his eyes snapped open with hatred. He barely managed to lift his left hand and point it at Rhodes. His voice, hoarse but venomous, "If I die, I'm taking you with me." Death storm. A ball of dense purple-black light gathered in his palm. It erupted into a searing beam of destruction, shooting straight at Rhodes. "Natsu!" Someone shouted. "I got it." Natsu answered. "Elfman." "Man." Elfman roared and transformed into his Beast King form. He charged forward, seized Natsu by the ankles, and spun him around like a human hammer. With one final roar, he released. Natsu flew like a meteor trailing fire. The beam of cursed magic struck Rhodes and swallowed him whole. Ugh! Even in his mountain dragon form, Rhodes felt the searing pain shoot through his body like molten blades carving into his bones. The attack from Jose had pierced deeper than he expected. Rhodes. Myra, now returned to her normal form, struggled to rise to her feet. Staggering toward him with panic in her eyes, she reached for him. Enough. Natsu's roar cracked through the air. Flames erupted around him brighter, wilder, more alive than ever before. Crimson and gold scales shimmered faintly along his cheekbones and jaw. The fiery aura blazed with such intensity that the very ground around him began to melt, but to his friends, it felt warm, comforting. Familiar. Dragon Slayer Secret Art Guild Flame, Crimson Lotus. Phoenix Blade. Trailing a radiant, golden tail flame, Natsu charged forward. He slammed into Jose head-on, engulfing the dark mage in an inferno of celestial fire. The flames roared and surged, lifting both of them high into the sky like a divine phoenix taking flight. From the ground, it looked like a blazing arrow ascending into the heavens. Until it exploded into a shower of flaming petals, like fireworks at the peak of summer. Jose's body convulsed in the flames. His eyes rolled back, mouth gaping, clothes reduced to blackened rags. His magic broke. His will shattered. He fell limp, unconscious. Together, they plummeted toward the lake. Natsu. Happy dove like a bullet, wings beating desperately. Just as Natsu lost altitude, the creature caught him midair, preventing him from crashing into the water. Crack. Plop. Jose wasn't so lucky. He crashed through the ice bridge Gray had constructed earlier and plunged into the freezing lake below. Wah! Makarev suddenly bolted upright in bed, panting and drenched in sweat. His body trembled. He had dreamed that the guild was in flames, the children overwhelmed by phantom soldiers, and Lucy, his dear, new family member, dragged away by Jose. And worst of all, in that dream, he couldn't do anything to stop it. It was just a dream. Right? He whispered. "You're awake earlier than expected," came Polly Uzuka's tired voice. "Let me guess. A nightmare?" The words grounded him, but his heart still thundered. He turned to her, frantic. "How's the guild? Has Phantom moved?" Polly Uzuka sighed, her gaze serious but soft. "I don't know. But I can sense it. There's a battle happening right now." She paused and added gravely. "Just moments ago, I felt an enormous wave of magic. I think Jose has made his move." Without another word, Makarev threw off his covers and leapt out of bed, moving faster than any old man should have. When he reached the doorway, he had already changed into a crisp white robe emblazoned with the emblem of the 10 wizard saints. Polly Uzuka watched silently. Before she could stop him, Makarev turned slightly and said, "Thank you, Polyuzica. But there's no time for rest. My children need me. Chapter 351, Who am I? Where am I? Where is the phantom? Apple trees filled the land surrounding Polyuzica's treehouse. It was harvest season now, and the branches sagged with plump, red apples. She often picked a few baskets to trade in town for daily essentials. She'd been in the middle of doing just that when Makarov was carried to her for treatment. Now that he had left, Polyuzica sighed and returned to her work. Maybe I should pick a little extra this time, send some to the guild. If they win this fight. Her expression tensed. No, those brats will win. That crazy, chaotic guild will definitely win. She looked toward the direction Makarov had gone and suddenly scowled. That's why I hate humans. All they do is fight. Their entire history is one war after another. And Makarov, what kind of fool tries to throw away his life at his age? If he wants to die, then just drop dead already. With a huff, she kicked over a full basket of apples, sending them tumbling across the grass. One apple rolled farther than the others, only to be caught by a gloved hand. Polyuzica's breath hitched. She hadn't even sensed this person arrive. She turned toward the strange figure, wrapped head to toe in cloth and a cloak despite the summer heat. "Mistoken?" she asked warily. "Can I eat this?" he said calmly, lifting the mask just enough to take a bite, without waiting for her answer. "Don't eat my food without permission." Polyuzica snapped. She crossed her arms and glared. "What are you doing here? As much as I hate human wars, you are one of them, aren't you? If you've got time to loiter, then get out of here already." She grumbled a string of insults. Annoying. Idiot. Useless, but the truth was, even she knew he'd just lent the guild a massive helping hand. Miss Hogan raised one arm. Dozens of tattered flags bearing Phantom Lord's crest fluttered into the air, and scattered across the ground. "You took down all of Phantom's branch guilds?" Polyuzica blinked in surprise. "What a mess. Humphrey. Don't litter," she grumbled, covering up her faint smile. Miss Hogan finished his apple and said quietly, "I spent some time collecting the Master's magic power. But it looks like I didn't need it after all." Polyuzica's eyes softened. "That's because there's more than just you." Another brat stepped up. "Guess Makarov's luck hasn't run out yet." Then, with her usual snarl, she added, "Still a damn fool though." Miss Hogan didn't reply. "I want another apple," he said instead. Nearby, Worm had slinked out of the house and was gnawing on the apples Polyuzica had knocked over. Not stolen, those were dropped on the ground, so surely she didn't want them anymore. At least, that was Worm's logic. "You two freeloaders. Get lost if you're finished," she huffed. "We beat Phantom. We won. We actually won. We defeated one of the 10 wizard saints." The air was filled with jubilant cheers. Everyone laughed, leapt, shouted, and hugged. The tension, the fear, the pressure of the last few days exploded all at once in pure celebration. Lucy stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes brimming with tears. This had all started because she ran away from home. But now, everyone was okay. Everyone was smiling. She smiled too. "Thank you, everyone." Natsu stumbled toward her, barely standing. He reached out and gently placed a hand on her head, flashing his usual bright, boyish grin. "Hey, Lucy. No one can just take a fairy tale wizard. If you want to stay, then stay for good." Lucy wiped her tears and nodded, her heart full. "Yeah. I will." Across the field, Mirza lay on the ground, still recovering. She looked up at the clear blue sky. The image of the fiery explosion just moments ago was still vivid in her mind, like a beacon of victory. Whether it was Natsu or Rhodes, both seemed to hold an incredible power deep within them. Gray stood nearby with his arms crossed, a faint smile on his lips. But he couldn't help grumbling. TCH. Natsu totally stole the spotlight in the end. Elfman gave a proud nod. "That's what being a man is all about." Loke, brushing dust from his coat, let out a sigh. "Honestly, I think Rhodes stood out even more. I mean, even Myra listens to him. And Drz. She actually followed his strategy. That's saying something." Loke still remembered the time Mirza pummeled him half to death. The memory made him flinch reflexively. Kana suddenly wrapped an arm around both Gray and Loke, grinning with a tired kind of joy. "Come on, quit fussing over who was flashier. We all fought hard today. Now it's time to call everyone back, celebration time. I'm beat, and I need a good drink." Loke didn't react. He was used to Kana's spontaneous hugs. Gray, on the other hand, flushed crimson. Kana raised an eyebrow, then let go immediately. "Geez, calm down. Focus on finding your clothes first." Gray glanced down, and froze. He was down to his shorts and some hastily wrapped bandages. "Huh? When did I?" he stammered. "Elsewhere on the battlefield, Rhodes was resting in Myra's arms. Her face was full of concern. "How are you feeling?" Rhodes, unusually serious, gently moved to sit up. "I'm fine. But where's Warren?" The telepathy link cut off. "What happened?" Myra leaned in. "Something wrong?" "Yes. The Phantom Lord branches haven't made a move yet. We can't assume they'll stay quiet," Rhodes said, quickly shifting into guild strategist mode. "We need Warren and the sniper team to stay on alert. The ones who surrendered, we can't ignore the risk of them regrouping. Also, we need to fish Jose out of that lake and tie him up properly. Can't let him stir up more trouble." And he rattled off instruction after instruction, sharp and focused despite his injuries. After all, a battle might end, but the work of keeping everyone safe never stopped. Myra couldn't help smiling as she watched him dash into the crowd, grabbing Warren by the shoulder and relaying his orders with quiet urgency. She always admired that about him, his sense of responsibility, the way he carried the guild's weight even when no one asked him to. Maybe that was when she first started falling for him. But her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp pain in her shoulder. She winced, placing a hand over the wound. Now that the adrenaline was fading, her body was starting to ache all over. Jose's last counterattack had been brutal. Which meant Rhodes must have been hit even harder. She looked toward him again, her heart tightening. Without a word, she stepped forward and followed close behind. Under Rhodes' direction, everyone had thrown themselves back into work, patching up injuries, organizing supplies, keeping guard over the captured enemies. The adrenaline hadn't quite faded, but the battlefield was finally starting to settle. Then, without warning, a familiar magic swept through the air. Warm. Reassuring. Like the sun after a storm. "Master!" someone called out. Makarov stood on a nearby ridge, clad in his ceremonial white robe. He looked perfectly fine, his presence steady, his eyes wide with awe. One by one, everyone turned and saw him. A cacophony of joyful shouts broke out. "Master, you're okay. Master! We did it. We beat Phantom Lord." Makarov's jaw dropped as he took in the scene, the once imposing Phantom Lord Guild Hall now reduced to smoldering ruins. The last of the Void Knights still scuttling around, dutifully chewing through the wreckage. Jose Porla, the former master of Phantom Lord, bound tightly in magical chains and lying in disgrace. And his own children, scraped, bruised, exhausted but smiling. Victorious. He blinked several times, almost dazed. Who am I? Where am I? Am I still dreaming? The weight of what he was seeing hadn't quite sunk in. Then, a quiet voice reached him. "Master. You're finally here." Rhodes staggered where he stood and collapsed forward. Myra, who had never once taken her eyes off him, caught him immediately. At the same moment, the three void grubs that had been churning out reinforcements flickered and vanished. The crabs that patrolled the perimeter disappeared one by one. Even the raptors in the skies shimmered away like mist. Whatever contingency plans Phantom Lord might have had, whatever reinforcements might have come, none of it mattered anymore. The moment Makarov returned, Rhodes let go of everything he'd been holding in. The weight of the entire battle, the lives of dozens of comrades, the constant fear of making a mistake that might get someone hurt, it all came crashing down. He had held it together, had led them through one of the fiercest battles fairy tale had ever seen, but now, finally, he didn't have to. His throat tightened. His eyes burned. He wanted to cry. Myra wrapped her arms around him gently, holding him close. Her voice was soft, like a lullaby. "It's okay now. Everything's okay." Chapter 352, Extreme Joy Leads to Sorrow. How would it feel to learn that the children of your guild banded together to defeat a wizard saint? Shock. Disbelief. And then pure, overwhelming joy. As expected of fairy tale mages, ah ha 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 ha. Makarov laughed so hard it echoed across the battlefield, roaring like thunder. His belly shook with each wheeze, his eyes crinkling with pride until they looked ready to float out of his head. "Well done. You've done wonderfully." For decades, he had carried the burdens of a guild master. But in this moment, surrounded by laughter, tears, and a pile of half-destroyed ruins, it all felt worth it. This was the strength he had always hoped for, not the might of one person, but the power born when many hearts beat as one. As he listened to the children recount the battle, Makarov's chest swelled even more. The assault team fought with valor. The mobile team moved like lightning. The sniper squad timed every shot perfectly. The command unit gave clear, precise orders. The main force worked together like a living storm. How could any guild be this good? And best of all, it was his guild. "Rhodes, what about the perimeter patrol?" "Ask the master." "How should we deal with the injured phantom members?" "Ask the master." "Rhodes." "Ask the master." With that, Rhodes finally let himself relax. He sprawled into Myra's lap without shame, face buried against her as though declaring, "My job's done, leave the rest to the old man." But peace didn't last long. After just a few seconds, he glanced up and noticed Myra wincing slightly, her brows furrowed. Takeover magic always had odd quirks. When Myra returned to her normal state from Satan's soul, any damage taken often showed up in her clothes or appearance. Her outfit, once battle-ready, now looked singed and torn in several places. Her face was smudged with ash. Her silver hair was tousled, some strands curled from heat. One of her sleeves had been ripped away, revealing her scratched shoulder and a worn black bra strap that looked seconds away from snapping. The hem of her top was torn, revealing her belly and part of her side waist. Her skirt had a gash up one leg, just enough to glimpse the fairy tale emblem printed on her thigh. That last hit must have hurt. Rhodes muttered, heart taking a little. He quickly fished a clean shirt from his satchel and offered it to her. He thought about retrieving the medicine kit too, but treating wounds here wasn't exactly private. "It's nothing serious," Myra said softly, noticing the concern in his eyes. "No real injuries. I'll heal in no time." She accepted the shirt, wrapping it around herself. It was clearly one of his. The sleeves were too long, swaying like soft wings when she raised her arms. The hem practically reached her knees, more like a mini dress than a shirt. Even after buttoning it, it hung loose on her, hiding her curves. For some reason, that made it feel more intimate. She tried tying the ends into a knot to show off her waist, but it just looked awkward. "I should have packed something else," Rhodes thought, a little regretful. That one was for home. Before he could help her adjust it, he was abruptly yanked away. Apparently, Elfman had started it, but now a whole group had gathered. They hoisted Rhodes up onto their shoulders with cheers, tossing him into the air like a hero. "Hey! You guys done already? Watch the wound. Bastards! Are you guys done yet?" Rhodes' shouting went completely ignored. The guildmates just kept tossing him into the air over and over again, laughing and cheering as if it were the most important thing in the world. Rhodes huffed, annoyed at first. These lunatics had interrupted his sweet moment with Myra, and now they were treating him like a beach ball. But after a few more throws, he started laughing too. Myra stood nearby, hands covering her mouth as she giggled softly, her long sleeves drooping past her wrists. The oversized shirt she wore added an extra layer of charm, the way it swayed when she laughed. She looked adorably serene, and utterly content. Victory. They had defeated an overwhelmingly powerful enemy. Makarov, still riding high from winning a war without lifting a finger, joyfully invited everyone back to the Fairy Tale Guild Hall for a celebration feast. Unfortunately, the guild was already barely holding together. As soon as the laughter and stomping began, the floorboards creaked ominously, beams groaned, and then crash. The roof sagged, a wall cracked, and the second floor tilted at a ridiculous angle. The entire building looked like it had been suplexed by Elfman and lived to tell the tale. Though it hadn't completely turned into rubble, it was clearly now a prime example of a condemned structure. So much for the party indoors. Makarov sighed, holding his head in frustration. "Let's rebuild it later. For now, we'll celebrate outside." And just like that, the celebration turned into both a victory feast and a guild rebuilding kickoff event. Classic fairy tale style. Rhodes squinted suspiciously at the old man. "You're not sad about the collapse, you're just disappointed the party's outdoors, aren't you?" At that moment, a familiar trio arrived, limping, bruised, but full of concern. The Shadow Gear. Levy, Jet, and Droy stumbled toward the wreckage. "Is everyone all right?" Levy called out of breath. Droy leaned on a crutch, still recovering. "We rushed here. Sorry we're late." Jet's arm was wrapped in a cast. "The guild. It's really been wrecked, huh?" Lucy's eyes widened. "Levy, Jet, Droy, I'm so sorry." Levy gave her a tight hug before she could say more. "No, Lou. This isn't your fault." Max, overhearing, walked over and scolded Jet. "Wait, you sneaked out of the hospital again?" Jet looked sheepish. "We wanted to fight too, but we didn't make it in time." Gray crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? Well, by the looks of you three, you should be in the hospital, not out here. You're wrapped in bandages from head to toe. I got injured on the last mission, all right? Not by those phantom scumbags." Gray said it with a guilty look, because truthfully, it was the Element 4 who beat him up. "Welcome back," Makarov said with a warm smile to the three delinquents who escaped from the hospital. "Anyway, let's just have that party already." "Oh yeah." But the party never got started. Because the Magic Council's enforcement squad showed up. In full force. They were here to detain both guilds. The reason? A violation of the Treaty of Prohibition against armed conflict between guilds. In short, you guys caused too much chaos. Time to answer for it. Since both Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord's guild halls were now glorified piles of rubble, it was impossible to question them in town. So, everyone was hauled off to a temporary garrison outside Magnolia. The Fairy Tale crew was grouped on one side. Phantom Lord's members, beaten and bruised, were gathered separately on the other. Jose, still unconscious, was unceremoniously carried in like luggage. For good measure, the squad had slapped magic-suppressing cuffs on him. Better safe than sorry. The commander of this enforcement operation was a familiar face, leader of the council. When he showed up, flanked by a full squad of Rune Knights, his entrance was dramatic. He barked orders, stared people down, and acted as if he was going to personally exile half the guild. But once everyone arrived at the garrison, his tone noticeably changed. Summon the medical corps. Prioritize treatment of the wounded, Leh said after glancing at all the bandaged and limping Fairy Tale mages. Also, send a request to Magnolia General Hospital for additional support. Use the council's authority if needed. Meanwhile, on the edge of the group, Natsa pulled on Rhodes's sleeve like a misbehaving school kid. Rhodes. They're gonna lock us up, right? Let's escape. Come on. I'm great at running away. Rhodes deadpanned. Do you ever take things seriously? If we run now, they'll pin the whole thing on us. Then, after thinking for a second, he pulled Natsa back in with a sigh. Honestly though, this is probably just for show. Maybe a slap on the wrist and some scolding. He lowered his voice and muttered under his breath. If the master plays it right, we might even be able to get reimbursed. Whether the guild ends up in an economic crisis or not kind of depends on how well he negotiates this mess. Chapter 353, Our Fairy Tale has been a peace-loving guild since ancient times. The council's encampment had been set up just outside the western outskirts of Magnolia. From a distance, there were at least 30 large tents pitched in neat rows. After all, with the sheer number of people involved, essentially 2 entire guilds' worth, it made sense. It seemed they had come prepared for full-scale confrontation, though ironically, they'd arrived after the fighting had ended. Members from Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord were separated and escorted to distant tents. Even the wounded were treated in separate areas. The 2 prisoners, Juvia and Saul, had been moved to the medical station nearest Phantom Lord's camp. Formal interrogations hadn't yet begun. Liller, ever the methodical commander, was directing his subordinates to carry out various preparations. From the pace of things, it looked like this investigation would drag on for days. Rhodes and Myra were assigned to the Fairy Tale medical tent, minor injury section. Those with severe wounds were immediately carried off to receive urgent care or even surgery. Jose had been hauled away like that, still unconscious, cuffed with a magic sealing stone just in case. As a result, the council's interrogation order on the Phantom Lord side had ended up being completely reversed. Those higher up in rank were all too injured to be questioned right away. For those with lighter injuries, there was a choice: wait for a healer or help themselves. Like many of their guildmates, Rhodes and Myra opted to treat each other. They didn't want to burden the already overworked medics. Inside a small partitioned area meant for simple treatment, Rhodes sat on the edge of a small wooden stool, shirt off. Myra, gentle and precise, dabbed the area around his shoulder wound with an alcohol-soaked cotton ball. She found a towel nearby and used it to clean off the lingering soot and dried blood before carefully applying medicine and wrapping him in fresh bandages. She had tended to Rhodes like this once before. But this time, she noticed something different. His body had changed, his frame had filled out, and his muscles were leaner, stronger. Circling around, Myra pressed her fingertips lightly to his chest, then down across his abs. She caught herself and hastily made an excuse. Does it hurt here? This spot? She asked innocently. No, not at all. Rhodes actually wanted to joke and say it might feel better if she rubbed it again, but with their guildmates just on the other side of the canvas wall, he wisely kept that to himself. Once the upper body injuries were taken care of, Myra held the medicine bottle and cotton in her hands, hesitating. Her gaze drifted toward the lower part of Rhodes's waist, where the blast from the magic crystal had definitely done damage. She knew there were burns or bruises there. Her cheeks slowly flushed pink. And then red. Rhodes didn't move. He stayed completely still, watching her from the corner of his eye, trying his best not to grin. Pretending to be clueless was getting harder by the second. But Myra, of course, knew him far too well. She narrowed her eyes and huffed. You can take care of the rest yourself. So much for that tiny glimmer of hope. Rhodes stood up with a sigh. Fine, then it's my turn to help you. Okay. Myra answered without hesitation. She sat down and removed her torn shirt and ruined top, leaving only a small underlayer of clothing. Her cheeks were still a bit pink, but she kept her composure. Rhodes knelt behind her and mimicked her movements from earlier, carefully cleaning her back, wiping away dirt and blood with a towel. Myra's dress had gotten in the way while bandaging, so she asked Rhodes to undo the straps. Holding the front of the dress in place with both hands, she let him tend to her injured shoulder. Once it was wrapped, she pulled it back up and tied it again. Rhodes remained calm and composed the entire time, acting like it was all routine, doing everything himself, personally and properly. Because he couldn't allow himself to take advantage of the moment. After gently slipping his oversized shirt back onto her shoulders, he asked, "What about clothes? You gonna keep wearing mine? Yours is barely holding together." Myra's suitcase had been left at Lucy's house, and Rhodes hadn't remembered to bring it. Myra was about to say, "It's fine, I'll just keep wearing yours." But after a moment of thought, she smiled faintly and said, "Let's borrow one from Riza later. We're about the same size, she's bound to have a spare." "Huh? I could have sworn Riza's just a bit taller than you." Rhodes muttered. "Yeah? So?" Myra replied casually. "Ah. No, it's nothing." "Nothing at all?" Rhodes said, waving it off. Myra narrowed her eyes and elbowed him gently. This guy always noticed the weirdest little things. Rubbing his chest with a wince, Rhodes pulled up a nearby stool, sat next to Myra, and gently lifted her legs onto his lap to treat her wounds. He applied medicine with careful fingers and wrapped the bandages neatly. Later, as they exited the tent together, they spotted Riza stepping out of a nearby treatment cubicle. In a nurse's uniform. Rhodes immediately sensed something was off. For the sake of his guildmate's safety, he asked, "Riza, who are you just treating?" "Natsu and Gray," she replied matter-of-factly, pulling out a syringe from who knows where. "They've already been taken care of. Do you two need assistance?" "Nope. We're good," Rhodes answered quickly, giving Myra a look. "Actually, Myra's got something she wanted to ask you. You two should chat." "MMHMM. Riza, come with me for a second," Myra said, casually taking Riza by the wrist and dragging her back into the cubicle. Rhodes, curious in the name of humanitarian concern, peeked into the tent Riza had come from. Sure enough, Natsu and Gray were sitting back to back, completely mummified in layers of bandages. Even their mouths were taped shut like a pair of hostages. They thrashed and whimpered, and when they spotted Rhodes, their eyes lit up like he was their savior. Trying not to laugh, Rhodes stepped forward to help peel off the wrappings. "You know, you guys could have just torn through it. Or burned it off," Gray grumbled. Who knew Riza's bandages were tougher than armor? "That woman doesn't know the first thing about medicine and still insists on playing nurse." "I didn't dare burn it," Natsu added. "Feels like setting fire to council property might be frowned upon." "I.e." came a faint voice from between them. Rhodes blinked. "Happy?" The little exceed was sandwiched flat between Natsu and Gray like a furry pancake. "Why am I even tied up too? I'm not even hurt." "Wah." Happy sobbed, tears streaming down his fuzzy cheeks in misery. "Go ask Riza to treat you to a fish later," Rhodes said to Happy, offering some sympathy and summoning Worm to cheer him up. But the moment Worm appeared, chewing on half an apple with a puzzled look, Rhodes remembered something. He had left the little guy with Granny Polly Uzuka. Crunch. Worm finished the apple, turned around, and squatted down with his back to Rhodes. His mood was complicated. Rhodes gently patted his head. "The council's providing dinner tonight. Eat as much as you want." Worm purred like a piglet in bliss. Greedy little guy. "No, just a typical Worm. The easiest one to coax." The council's inquiry began with individual interrogations, and naturally, the first to be questioned was the guild master. Lehr sat across from Makarov, skimming over a detailed report listing both sides' participants and injuries. "It's hard to believe," Lehr said, pushing up his glasses. "If we didn't already confirm what happened in Magnolia and Oak Town, I would have thought Phantom Lord was the victim." Makarov laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha. Well, what can I say? Our kids are just that good. They had Jose flattened before I even showed up." Ha 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 ha. Lehr's brow twitched. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple as he cut in. "Master Makarov, I'd advise against boasting about your guild's military prowess during an official council investigation." Right. Makarov waved a hand sheepishly. "Sorry, that was off the cuff. Let me rephrase that." He cleared his throat dramatically and paused for a few seconds as if digging deep into his memory. "Ahem. Yes, well, as one of the 10 wizard saints, my personal mission has always been to safeguard the stability and prosperity of the magical world. And as everyone knows, Fairy Tail has long been a peace-loving guild. In fact, generations ago, our very first guild master played a pivotal role in upholding peace in Fiore, even helping to draft the original treaty of prohibition against interguild warfare. That same spirit has been passed down to us, unwavering to this day. We've never stopped advocating for peace." Was that true? Sure, the historical bits were accurate, and technically Mavis Vermillion did help foster peace in her time. But still calling fairy tale peace-loving felt like a bit of a stretch. And was he reciting from a memorized script? The delivery was suspiciously polished, clearly rehearsed. Chapter 354, Drinking Tea. Although it sounded a bit far-fetched, it was Makarov who said it. Sola had no choice but to have someone record the statement. The core idea was simple: everything was Phantom Lord's fault, and Fairy Tale had acted purely in self-defense. Once all the subjective language was stripped away, the general sequence of events could be confirmed by the testimony of other guild members. Either way, it was clear that Phantom Lord initiated the attack. While some of Fairy Tale's retaliation seemed excessive at first, once Makarov was ambushed and collapsed, their counterattack became fully justified. Given the terrifying war machines Phantom Lord brought to the battle, combined with the pressure of facing one of the 10 wizard saints, striking back with full force was entirely understandable. After Makarov finished his dramatic account, it was Riza and Myra's turn. They didn't need Rhodes to step in or explain anything for them. They each spoke for themselves. Their words focused on the heartbreak and fury of returning home only to find their beloved guild in ruins, and the crushing despair of being threatened by a wizard saint. Next came Lucy's statement. Leah brought up her father hiring Phantom Lord to retrieve her. Lucy firmly stated that she was already an adult. If she chose to leave home and join Fairy Tale, that was her decision and hers alone. Trying to force her back against her will was wrong. Therefore, Phantom Lord's mission was essentially a criminal act, kidnapping plain and simple. Even if her words would cause trouble for her father, Lucy didn't care. She couldn't pretend that what he did was justified, nor that her friends were in the wrong for stepping in. After Lucy gave her statement, she was done for the day. By then, it was getting late, and dinner preparations began. Rhodes sat down with Warren Natsu, who looked especially sheepish every time he saw someone from the council, joining the same table as everyone who had been questioned earlier. How was it? Did they rough anyone up with a little council-style justice? Rhodes asked with a teasing grin. Of course not. We're not criminals, you know. Makarov replied, still riding the high of his speech. You should have heard me today. It was magnificent. Ha. Rhodes chuckled inwardly. How could I not know? Myra smiled and held up a finger. Master was so amazing, I'll reward you with a bottle of wine when we get home. I brought it all the way from Kate's shelter. That's wonderful. Makarov beamed. But Myra, why are you dressed like Ursa? It's a bit uncanny. Really? Myra tilted her head, looking amused. She was wearing a sleeveless top borrowed from Ursa, paired with a blue boatie and a pleated skirt of the same hue. To complete the look, she'd let her bangs down and styled her hair just like Ursa's. She looked like a silver-haired version of the Titania herself. I think it suits her, Ursa said, who had changed out of her armor and into an outfit identical to Myra's. It's fun to swap styles with a friend now and then. Rhodes didn't hold back his admiration. I think Myra looks stunning either way. Really? Myra lit up at the praise and turned to Ursa. Then how about we swap for real? I'll give you one of my favorite outfits in return. Swapping styles? That actually sounds fun, Ursa said thoughtfully. Maybe I'll try doing my hair like yours next time. Lucy muttered under her breath. I think Mr. Rhodes would say Myra looks great no matter what she's wearing. Rhodes didn't deny it. After all, it was the truth. Just then, Ursa pulled out another set of the same outfit and held it out to Lucy. Want to try it on too, Lucy? What is this, some kind of dress like Rosa Day? Lucy stared at the outfit and grimaced. This really doesn't suit my style. It wouldn't hurt to try it on, Ursa said with a smirk. In that case. Natsu chimed in with a mischievous grin. Would that make you Lucy Rosa or Rosa Lucy? He started laughing, clearly imagining Lucy wearing full Titania-style armor and throwing her usual dramatic complaints. We can help Lucy take off her clothes. Happy added way too cheerfully. Lucy immediately covered her chest and scrambled backward. You're harassing me. I can help too, Gray said casually as he tossed off his shirt like it was second nature. Lucy looked absolutely mortified. Why are you stripping first? You're even more of a pervert than Happy. The group burst into chaotic laughter. What was supposed to be a serious moment quickly devolved into the usual fairy tale-style commotion. Even now, with the council around and tension still lingering, their trademark noise and chaos couldn't be stifled. Not even a formal investigation could dampen their guild spirit. The only thing missing was alcohol. Natsu, in particular, seemed restless without something to blow up or a festival to crash. The energy wasn't quite up to Fairy Tale's usual standard, but it was close. Still, the guards assigned to monitor them exchanged puzzled glances. Are these people really under investigation? They acted more like rowdy tourists than detained suspects. In contrast, the Phantom Lord members remained eerily quiet. Then again, Most of them were still unconscious. As night fell, the living conditions turned out to be rough, more suited to soldiers than civilians. After all, the site was a temporary council field camp, built for function, not comfort. The basic amenities were tolerable, but the sleeping arrangements? Less so.